Sup folks, welcome to the part 12, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, chapter 70. Here comes a new challenger. Fu was always rather good at noticing things, picking up on things that others didn't. Whether it was people's facial expressions, the looks in their eyes, their body language. This also applied to just noticing things about his surroundings. And that's how he got into this situation. Fu had been just swinging around the forest with Kyozai, practicing his agility skills so that he would be a better hero in the future. Alright. That's 20 swings from 19 trees, without falling. Doing good so far, Kyozai. Fu thought as he took a break, his hands forming claws that allowing him to stay on the side of the tree. He felt Kyozai's appreciation and a bit of smugness. Fu rolled his eyes. Don't get overconfident, we could still. Low. Fu frowns, as he could suddenly faintly hear a young girl's voice. And no one he was familiar with. Now, for the most part, people didn't just stumble their way towards their house by accident. Mostly because they lived in a forest filled to the brim with Grimm guarding it. So for someone to be this close without his Yuku being alerted was suspicious. And so that's what led Fu to seek out the source. Using Kyozai's tendrils, he moved from tree to tree, as silently as he could, getting closer to the voice. And eventually, he found its source. A small girl looking to be about 8 years old. She had long pink hair and donned a simple red dress. What's more, on top of her head are what at first glance looked like cat ears, but were actually some type of horn. She was speaking into what seemed like an earpiece, which made Fu even more suspicious of her. They won't know anything, were the last words she said before suddenly, the earpiece floated out of her ear, and was crushed by an invisible force. Yup. She is definitely suspicious. Fu thought while looking down on her, as she started walking towards the direction of the house. I can't let someone like this enter the house just yet. Too dangerous. I need to figure out what she wants. Still, Fu understood the importance of subtlety, so he waited a minute, following silently behind her. After a bit of time had passed, he figured it was time to greet their guest. Fu used Kyozai's tendrils to lower himself down from the tree, and onto the ground a few feet behind the girl. Hey? Fu greeted. The girl jumped slightly and quickly turned around to face him. Hello? Please don't sneak up on me like that. You'll scare me to death. She put her hand on her chest, and she looked like she had almost been shot or something. And her voice was so timid and frail. In other words, she was overacting. Back when Kiba and him were on the streets, acting overly frail or weak was a good way to gain sympathy, or misdirect and trick someone. Especially compared to how she sounded earlier when she spoke in that earpiece. Back there she sounded cold and serious. Everything about her current self seemed fake. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Fu apologized. I just wanted to know what you were doing here. My name is Nice. The girl shuffled her feet nervously, in an extremely cute manner. Too cute. My mommy and daddy said that my quirk makes me a demon. And so they told me to go where all the other demons are. And I heard that was here. Oh? And what exactly is your quirk? Fu asked her. And my quirk? Nice stuttered. It makes me explode if I get too nervous. Or scared. I'm sorry if I'm rude, but this place is scary. See, can we go to the house? Please. Interesting. Then how did you do that thing with the earpiece earlier? Fu asked sarcastically, poking a huge hole in her story. Nice's eyes widened, and she took a step back in shock. Also, if your parents abandoned you, who were you talking to in your earpiece? Fu asked, continuing to poke holes in her story. A second later, Nice, if that was her real name, gave him a fierce scowl, showing her true self. With an expression that did not belong on a child, full of murderous intent. Slice, and then Fu's head flew off. Out of nowhere, suddenly Fu's neck was sliced through, and his head flew up into the air, his neck and now dismembered head spilling blood all over the ground. tch. Damn it, now I have to hide this. Nyes grit her teeth in annoyance, as if she had just spilled something on her clothes and not taken a life. Or, tried to anyway. Before Nyes could do anything, two tendrils came out of Fu's body, one from his neck that caught his head and brought it down to his body, and another that shot out of his chest, and smacked Nyes into a tree a few feet away, holding her there. What? Nyes hissed out in pain and confusion, wondering what exactly was happening here. Yeah, definitely a good thing I didn't let you get close to the house, Fu said after reattaching his head. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr freeing the pink-haired demon child. How the fuck are you still alive? Firstly, language, Fu said, as Kaisoi started to overtake his body, shifting into battle mode. Secondly, you said it yourself. You were looking for the place where the demons lived. Well, you found it. Once Fu had been completely covered in Kyozai's black armor goop, he sent out 4 tendrils from his back at Nai's, hoping to ensnare her limbs. However, those tendrils didn't make it more than a few feet towards Nai's, before they were suddenly cut to ribbons by an invisible force. Looks like she has some kind of invisible telepathic blade or something. Fu analyzed. Suddenly, Nai's was catapulted at him by the same invisible force, and when she was only a few feet away, she suddenly stopped midair, just floating there, or rather it looked like she was been held up by something. And then Fu felt something like a weird invisible hand go through his chest, and pull out his heart. No, not a blade. Maybe a hand? Fu theorized, and he made his hand grow to the size of his body and tried to hit Nai's in a grand sweeping motion. However, when the swipe was about 2.5 feet away from Nai's body, it was stopped by that invisible force again. But that was Fu's plan, as suddenly the black symbiote goo started spreading onto whatever it was that was stopping it, making it visible. It was a hand. A hand connected to a long tendril, that, judging from what Fu could see of it, was coming out of her back. Grrrr. Off. Nai's growled. And suddenly, the tendril and hand disappeared, causing the part of the symbiote that was covering it to get sucked back into Fu's hand. But then suddenly the hand was cut into pieces. Just die already. Slice. 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 Crunch. Nai's fell to the ground, and a second later, Fu's limbs and head were sliced off. His body was cut in two, and his skull was smashed into the ground like a pumpkin, spilling blood viscera all over the place. Nai's breathed a sigh of relief, thinking she finally killed him. But it didn't last long. Kyozai brought all of Fu's parts together, and helped along with Fu's natural regeneration, to put him back together in a matter of seconds. That's not gonna work, Fu said as he finished regrowing everything. What are you, immortal? Nai's shouted out in frustration and slight fear. Pretty much. Of course, both Fu and Kyozai had ways to negate their regeneration, and eventually kill them, but she didn't need to know that. A very interesting quirk you have there. Let's see. From what I could figure out, it lets you create invisible hands that come out of your back, which can cut and crush opponents from a medium distance. But when I tried wrapping it up, it vanished. Can it turn intangible, or can it only exist for a short period of time? Nai's did not seem amused. Grrrr. Die. Suddenly Fu was picked up by the invisible arms and then slammed into the ground, where he was then clobbered by a barrage of extremely quick punches, that turned his body to a bloody paste. This still failed to kill him, however, and Kyozai wrapped around the arms that were punching him, halting them for a bit, and allowing Fu to finally see them all. 4. There were a total of 4. Okay, good to know. Fu thought. The arms vanished from Kyozai's grasp, before quickly going back to pummeling Fu's regenerating body. So she can make them vanish on command. Alright. Fu was gathering more and more info, all while planning a counterattack. Because while she was beating him into the dirt, Fu sent a special surprise under him. Suddenly, a big black tendril came out of the ground, having tunneled up behind Nai's Before the girl could react, the tendril smacked her into a tree, hard. Gah! Nice felt the wind get knocked out of her as her back hit the tree so hard, it made a crack in the wood. Quickly Fu recalled the tendril back into himself, as he started to regenerate his body back to pristine condition. It's a really good thing I can't feel pain, Fu thought as he jumped back, using his tendrils to make some lines in the dirt as he leapt away. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr farther. Once she reached the first line Fu drew, Fu sent out 5 tendrils towards her. She cut them up once they got closer to her. But little did she know, this was part of Fu's plan. Each one of those lines represented a foot of length, meaning he got to roughly measure how long her invisible hand tendril things were. Roughly 6 feet was her effective range it seemed. Fu sent a few more tendrils at her to confirm, and that seemed to be accurate. So she had 4 arms, with a range of 6 feet. She could make them intangible, they were very strong, and they moved very very fast. He couldn't afford to throw himself recklessly at her, otherwise, he'd use up all his meat reserves, and die. Fu had to fight smarter, not harder. But while Fu couldn't throw himself at her, Kyozai could. So long as there was no fire or sonic attacks, nothing could really hurt him. And she only had 4 of her arm things, and could only reach 6 feet. Kyozai could do much, much more. Fu mustered up as many tendrils as he could, around 20 in total, and launched them at Nais from as many angles as he could, as quickly as he could. Nais grit her teeth and braced herself. The tendrils came at her quickly and furiously, and Nais did the best she could to cut them to ribbons, but each time she cut one another one would come. She would cut that one, and the one she just cut would grow back and come back at her. They kept getting closer and closer to her, inching forward towards her, as she struggled to keep cutting them up. If this kept up they would reach her eventually. She had moved. Nais used her invisible arms to launch herself up into the trees, having one of her arms grab and dig into the tree trunk, making it seem like she was floating in the air. Fu sent the tendrils after her, and Nais had to jump from tree to tree, quickly getting away from the tendrils, and launching herself towards Fu. Fu sent out a tendril behind him, to grapple himself away from her range, but she was quick, and as he was getting away, she got close enough and sliced him in 2. She's fast, Fu thought as the tendril dragged his now legless body away from her. He doesn't even need to reattach his parts to heal. Nais growled as she watched Fu quickly start to grow back his legs. Nais then started to chase after him, with Fu swinging away as the two swung through the trees of the dense forest. She's faster than me, need to slow her down, Fu thought. Fu sent out tendrils all around him, grabbing branches off trees, and throwing them at Nais. Nais tossed them aside with ease, but this did slow her down just a little bit. Fu then started to make some hard turns, making it even harder for her to follow him. And eventually, Nais lost sight of him. The pink-haired girl looked around frantically, trying to figure out where he had gone. No. 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 Damn him, why won't he just die? She looked down at the ground beneath her, as emotions began to boil up. Shame, anger, fear. No. I won't fail. Not again. I can't fail again. And it went then, as she looked down, she noticed something. A shadow looming over her, getting bigger and bigger. Her eyes widened, and she looked up, to see Fu lunging at her from the sky. He was less than 3 feet away from her, she couldn't move away. Not in time to avoid an attack from the monster bearing down at her. She had to use one of her invisible arms to keep her up, and from this distance, she wasn't sure if she could cut him up fast enough with just 3. So she made a decision. Nais shot herself downwards towards the floor, getting some distance on Fu, and allowing her to use all her arms to slice Fu to pieces. Slice, 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 crack. Fu's body was cut into many, many pieces, and both of them fell on the floor, Nai's hitting her back on the hard dirt ground. The young girl screamed out in pain, as blood started coming out of her mouth, the impact doing serious damage to her small body. Fu's chunks and Kyozai's goo fell around her, as she used her quirk to make sure nothing fell on her, except for the blood that came raining down. Nai's lied on the floor for a minute, trying to recover from her injuries, and desperately hoping that Fu was actually dead. Unfortunately for her, it was not to be, as Kyozai's black goop started moving, gathering all of Fu's pieces in a ball of ooze. Inside the ball, Fu quickly regenerated, and the ball morphed back into Fu's form, as in about a minute Fu was back, good as new. At least on the outside. Internally, Fu had used up a little more than half his meat reserves, which was not good, to say the least. But she didn't know that. All that she saw was that she cut him into chunks, and he was still alive, and perfectly fine. While she was on the ground, very injured and running out of energy. To her, she was losing this fight and then some. But Fu knew this fight was far more even. If he wasn't able to regenerate, then he would die pretty quickly. Not to mention he would go into his rampage mode, meaning he wouldn't even be able to retreat. He'd turn into a mindless animal that would soon be slaughtered. But she didn't know that. And he could see the fear in angry red eyes. Maybe, just maybe, he could end the fight right here. And if not, at least he could find out a bit more from her. Fu took a few steps back, as Nai's lifted herself up with her quirk, and allowed Kyozai to retreat back into his body, revealing his normal form once more. Is this really worth it? Throwing yourself at an opponent you can't beat, for what? Why did you even come here? Fu asked her. It's none of your business. Nai spat at him, setting herself down on the ground. I'll kill you. Every quirk has a weakness. I'll find yours and I'll kill you. I can't fail. I won't. If that's true, then what about your weakness? Wouldn't overusing those arm things of yours do something bad to you? Fu asked her. Grrrr. They're called vectors. Nai said through clenched teeth. Judging from her reaction, overuse is a serious problem for her. Fu thought. Well, you're right about one thing. I have a weakness. But it's not something you can use. No matter how many times you use those vectors of yours, I'll just heal back up. You can't win this fight. So what are you even trying for? Why put yourself through all this? I can't fail. The girl repeated, looking at the ground with teeth gritted so tightly it's a wonder they didn't break. And her fist clenched so hard that her nails started to dig through her skin. Mommy and Daddy said I had to kill him. I have to. Otherwise, I'm worthless. And they'll put me in the training room again. I'm not going back. I can't go back. I won't. You don't have to, Fu told her. Huh? What? Nai looked up at him, confused and angry. Wondering what the hell he could be blathering on about. You don't have to go back to them, Fu said. It seems like you're one of us. The ones who go unlucky at birth. Most of our parents didn't love us either. My parents love me. The girl shouted back furiously. As long as I do what I'm told, and kill who they tell me to, they'll love me. Parents whose love you have to earn, aren't real parents. Fu countered. My father loves me, and every single one of my siblings, just for being us. Even when we mess up, and make him mad, or upset by doing something bad, he doesn't stop loving us, or whatever it is that your parents do to you, that's making react like that. And he'd never make us do something like taking lives. Shut up. Nai whispered, lowering her head, hiding her face from sight. Do you really want to live like that? Fu asked her, raising his voice. A slave to your parents. Working for love that they'll stop giving you if you mess up once? Is that really what you want to do with the rest of your life? Shut up. Nai shouted out in pure rage, and Fu expected her to charge at him again, and quickly made Kyozai go back over his body. But instead, her horns grew, tripling in length. Fu's eyes widened, as he had a bad feeling about what was about to happen next. Splat. And he was proven right a second later, as, despite being far out of her range, Fu felt her vectors fly into his body, and tear him in two. And then in 4, and then in 8, and more, until he was just a red mush and meat chunks on the ground. But Nice didn't stop. In a rage, she used her vectors to smash Fu's remains into the dirt, making a crater that got larger and larger with each strike. Smash. 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 The more she smashed up Fu's body, the more her own began to wear down, as her quirk started taking its toll on her. Blood started pouring from her mouth and her eyes, and cuts started appearing all over her body. She could feel her bones start to shake, and her head hurt so much she felt like she was dying. It was only when the pain became unbearable did she stop. Her horns shrank back into her head, and her vector shrunk down to their normal length. Nice looked at Fu's remains, which at this point was nothing but a bunch of red liquid on the ground. She waited, wondering if Fu would start regenerating. He didn't. Fu's remains stayed there, unmoving, and completely lifeless. After a couple of minutes passed, Nice fell on her knees and took deep breaths. Finally, the fight was over. She killed him. So why wasn't she happy? It hurt so much. She was in so much pain. But the mission wasn't over. She still had much more to do. And because of this, it would only be so much harder. And her parents wouldn't care how hard she tried. How much pain she endured for them. How much she bled for them. If she failed, then all of this would be meaningless, and she would go back to being tortured in the training room again. Do you really want to live like that? A slave to your parents? Working for love that they'll stop giving you if you mess up once? Is that really what you want to do with the rest of your life? As Fu's words went through her head, Nice's body felt even weaker. She felt sick, as a terrible feeling of fear, dread, and sadness permeated her body, and tears flowed freely from her eyes. Was this all her life had in store? Pain and blood. All this pain, all this death, for love that she'd never really be able to keep? Parents whose love you have to earn, aren't real parents. My father loves me, and every single one of my siblings, just for being us. Even when we mess up, and make him mad, or upset by doing something bad, he doesn't stop loving us, or whatever it is that your parents do to you, that's making react like that. And he'd never make us do something like taking lives. God, that sounded so nice. Too good to be true. It had to be some kind of lie. Because a life like that couldn't exist. All things had their purpose, all people had their purpose. They had jobs they needed to do, in order to earn what they wanted. And hers was to kill the people that made her parents' lives harder. That was what she was bred for, what her quirk was made for. To be loved for just existing was impossible. But it sounded so nice. How many times had she put on the persona of a sweet, dumb, innocent child? It always lowered people's guards. Because it was cute. People thought she was cute. How badly did she wish she was actually that cute, innocent, dumb, sweet girl. That she wasn't born with a quirk only made for taking lives. For a moment, she allowed herself a fantasy. A fantasy of a world where she was that sweet girl, and her parents were like how Fu described his father to be. No more assassinations, no more training, no more blood. Just love, smiles, happiness, and warmth. She felt a bit of warmth growing in her chest, that quickly tightened up and became painful. Because as nice as that fantasy was, it was just that. A fantasy. And now it was time to stop fantasizing and get back to war. Snap. Suddenly Nice heard a twig snap, right behind her. She quickly turned her head and saw Fu about a foot away from her, his hand formed into a blade, ready to strike. In that instant, they both reacted. Nice's vector shoved Fu away as hard as she could, but not before he could get in a single strike. Chop. Smash. Fu hit hard enough to crack it almost all the way through, despite it being a rather large and thick tree. And Nice saw her right horn fall to the ground, as it had been chopped off her head. Na Nyes picked up her fallen horn, looking at it with eyes full of shock and horror. After seeing how your horns grew when you powered up, I figured they were more important than I thought. Fu said, making note of the thick tree behind him, before turning back to his opponent. And judging by your reaction, I'm guessing I was right. Nyes spent a few more seconds mourning the loss of her horn, before her face contorted into an enraged snarl, and she stood back up and turned to look at Fu. How are you still alive? I turned your whole body into juice. Not my whole body. Just most of it. Fu corrected. You see, the moment I realized you powered up and felt your vector start to tear my body apart, I used Kyozai to cut my head off and then had him roll it away where I could regenerate. And you were distracted by your own rage, that you didn't notice a thing. Damn you. Damn you. Nyes shouted out in fury. I gave you a chance. Now we do this the hard way. Fu then spun around, using his blade hand to cut the already mostly cut tree that he had been hit into, before dashing off to the right. Nyes was about to do something to attack him when she heard the sound of the tree falling. And it was about to fall, on top of her. The Pinkette grit her teeth, and readied her vectors. Her right horn had been cut off, meaning she only had the two vectors remaining on the left side of her body. When the tree came down on her, she sliced it to pieces. And while that saved her from most of the danger, with only two vectors she could only protect herself so much. So when the smaller chunks she cut up started to rain down, she couldn't stop them all, and one of them hit her right in the face. Nyes cried as pain washed over her, and she shut her eyes. Fu took advantage of this, and sent out a powerful tendril at top speed, right at Nyes. The girl could do nothing, as the tendril slammed into her, and then slammed her into a tree. Crack. Her head hit the tree hard, causing her skull to crack, and blood to come out. Nyes immediately lost consciousness, as her body went limp on Fu's tendril. Fu, feeling her go limp, concluded that she was no longer able to fight. Still, just to be safe, a smaller tendril split off from the larger one and went up to Nyes' other horn. Snap. With both horns broken, Fu felt it was safe to say, he won. So, what the heck happened, Nami? Izuku asked over the phone. Izuku was currently sitting in his office, and he was not happy. Okako, Fu, and Inko were also present, and none of them looked partially happy either. It had been a few hours since Fu's fight with Nyes, and it had been hectic. The girl had been taken away, placed in restraints, and sent to the hospital, to be treated for all the injuries she sustained from the battle. Now Izuku and company were left with the aftermath. Honestly, I have no idea, Nami told him. No does. We've been looking into it the moment you reported it, but we have no clue why what happened. Someone sent a child assassin here, probably to kill someone, probably me, and ended up fighting one of my children to the death. Almost killing Fu and themselves in the process. And you have no idea who sent them or why? Izuku shouted into the phone. Hey, man, don't take it out on me. It's not my fault. Nami told him. And it's not like we can't find it because we've been slacking off. DOC isn't even handling the investigation. There is no record of this girl anywhere. And we already put her through a blood test, but we can't find any damn results. Whoever sent this kid must be serious business. Which, actually, if you think about this, makes it even more fucked up, because you have all those resources to do crap like this, and you still send a child to kill someone. Really screwed up, man. Nami. Not helping. Izuku screamed. Right, sorry, Nami said. Of curiosity, are you more upset about the child assassin thing, the almost killing your son thing, or the possible attempt on your life thing? Yes. Izuku was now so angry that you could see the veins popped out of his head. Got it. Fair enough. Nami said. Anyway, we'll keep you posted about the situation, and on the topic of security. Well, you're hiring help anyway, so you should probably hire some security as well. Anyway, see ya. And then she hung up. Izuku grit his teeth and slammed his phone into the desk. He took a few deep breaths to try and expel the anger, so he could have a clear mind again. But it was difficult with how pissed off he was at the moment. Someone sent a child, no older than any of his own, to come here and kill him. And in the process, his own son was nearly killed. Everything about the situation made his blood boil. Both Inko and Okuko put their hands on his back, trying to soothe him, and helping a little bit. Izuku quickly went into his drawer, opened it up, and pulled out a beige candy bar. This was a gift from Amei. After hearing from Yami about how stressed Izuku could get, she made him this calm candy to help soothe his nerves. Izuku took a big chomp out of the bar and instantly felt a lot of the anger melt away, as the calming effect of the candy took hold. After taking a few more bites of it, his anger was subdued. Not dissipated, but subdued for now. Izuku looked up at Fu, who was staring at him from the other side of the desk, waiting to be addressed. Fu. When you were being attacked, why didn't you call for help? Izuku asked him sternly, but calmly. The side effect of the mood candies is that if you ate too much in one sitting, you'd be stuck in that mood for a while. So most of Izuku's emotions right now were being subdued by the candy. I didn't want anyone else to get hurt, Fu explained. That girl was too dangerous. If the 1A students or almost anyone else came, they would have died. So I lured her away from the house. And away from the Seers. But Fu, we have Grim. We could have just surrounded her with those until we could capture her. Izuku pointed out. You didn't need to risk yourself like that. Honestly Dad, I was just caught up in the fight, Fu explained. I was so focused on beating her and keeping her away from everyone else, that I didn't even think about the Grim. You got caught up in the fight. Izuku took a moment to ponder that. That seems unlike you. It is. Normally that wouldn't happen. But she was too strong. I needed to pay full attention to her. Otherwise, I would have died. Fu explained. But there was also something else. I wanted to find out more about her. Because some things didn't make sense about her. She didn't know about my regeneration's limits, so to her, I must have seemed unkillable. She was smart, and trained too, so she should have known when to give up and retreated at some point. But she never did. She was desperate and afraid of something. And I wanted to find out what it was. I see. So on top of saving us, you wanted to save her as well, Izuku surmised. There was a bit of a pause before he got up and went around his desk, before kneeling down and bringing his sons into a bear hug. I'm so proud of both of you, Izuku told them. You and Kyozai. Kyozai oozed out of Fu, and wrapped around Izuku, wanting to get in on the affection. You both protected your family against a very dangerous foe. Thank you both, Izuku said. That being said, you put both yourself and Kyozai in danger. Remember, Kyozai is your baby brother and depends on you to live properly. When you risk your life, you risk his as well. Fu's eyes widened a bit. That was a fantastic point that Fu hadn't thought about at all. Being bonded to Fu was rather hard to describe. He was aware that Kyozai was a separate being, but at the same time, he wasn't. Fu most of the time tended to think of Kyozai like his own sentient quirk, rather than a separate person, or the baby that he actually was. It was part of the bonding process. It was natural to think of them as one being. But they weren't. Kyozai was a baby. He was gonna do whatever Fu wanted him to do because Fu was his host. He needed him. He didn't really have much of a choice but to go along with Fu. Fu actually felt a bit bad about that part in particular. He didn't mind risking his own life for his family, but Kyozai was another matter. Sorry, Dad. Kyozai. Fu apologized. Kyozai felt confused but accepted it regardless. I'll accept whatever punishment you have for me, Fu said, bowing his head in acceptance of whatever came next. Izuku sighed and shook his head. Given the circumstances, I can't fully fault you for what happened. and you definitely did far more good than bad. With that in mind, I think you almost dying is enough of a punishment. Okako, can you take Fu on preparing a feast for him? I can only imagine how much of your reserves you used. A lot. Thanks, Dad. Fu gave Izuku a rare smile, which Izuku happily returned, as Okako guided him out of the room. The least I can do, for my little hero, Izuku said. Fu felt a twinge of embarrassment, as he was taken out of the room, and towards the kitchen. Once Fu left, Izuku leaned back in his seat and sighed. I'll have to ask Yami to make more sears and more Grim. I can't have this happen again. He reminds me so much of you. Inko smiled, recalling Fu's explanation. Yes. Reckless. Like me. Izuku lamented. First Yami, and now him? These kids are gonna kill me, and not Indy anyone thought they would have. Now you know how I felt, every time you decided to get a closer look at a hero fight. Inko giggled. Well, I would say you have it harder. I think so too, Izuku said. It's worth it though. Still. On top of increasing security, I also have to figure out why she came here in the first place. I would also be interesting to know what kind of sick person would send a child to kill someone, Inko said, a look of disgust. Oh, don't worry, Mom. When I find out who did this, Izuku felt his anger bubble up, overpowering the candy. I'll do what's within my power to make sure they pay. Okay, let's talk. Firstly, as many of you likely figured out, this new OC is basically just a nerfed version of Lucifer Elfenlied. And this whole fight was basically Lucy versus Carnage, but with both the characters being much weaker, and so that changes a lot of things. This fight really could have gone either way. But it was Fu's intelligence that allowed him to win here. I've pretty much stated that of the children, Fu is one of, if not the smartest. And you can see that on display here. Plus, since Fu doesn't really panic, he can think logically in battle with little issue. For the most part. He's still a child, and so he can very easily make a mistake that seasoned heroes wouldn't. Like not using the army of Nightmare Beast. To be honest, the real reason he didn't get help is because I wanted this to be a fight between the two of them. And so I tried to make a reason as best I could as to why he didn't call reinforcements. Anyway, you'll see Nice again, although she may be very different from how you've seen her now. If you watched Read Elfenlied, you may understand what I'm talking about. Now, who sent Nice is the real question? Well, it's the main villains. Who are they? Well, you can take a guess. Chapter 71, Aegis. Okay, so something I forgot to mention in the last chapter, just because we're starting to get the main villains, does not mean it's gonna start being all about them. They are gonna be an element that shows up every now and then, and we'll get an arc dedicated to them at times. The story is not gonna now be about taking them down. Taking them down is just part of the story. This story will be mostly a slice of life, comedic, action fic. Just wanted to make that clear. Also, Nice won't be back for a little while. Anyway, on to the story. New duds. Yes, I'd like as many invites as I can get my hands on, Izuku said, sitting at his desk talking into the phone. Yes. I know who expensive island invites are, I don't care. I have the money, just get me as many as you can. Knock. Give me a second, Izuku said into the phone, before turning his attention towards the door. Come in. The door opened, and Yami and Shiraku came in. Shiraku holding a box in her hands. Oh, will you two give me just a second, I need to finish this call, Izuku told them. The two nodded, and Izuku turned his attention back to his phone. Anyway, how many invites can you get me? That'll do. Just send me the invites and take the money, Izuku said. Now is that all? Good. Well then, goodbye. Izuku put down the phone and turned his attention towards his two children. Sorry about the wait. What did you two need? Well, after that assassin came, me and Yami were worried about what would have happened if Fu hadn't stopped them, Shiraku said with a worried look on her face, with Yami sharing the same expression. Izuku frowned. Unfortunately, he couldn't just say that he would have been alright because he wouldn't have. In truth, had Fu not stopped Nice, then he would have allowed her into his home an instant, and she would have killed him just as quickly. Which is why he was taking such elaborate measures to increase the power of their defenses. And so apparently were the children. So, we thought of something that might help you, Shiraku said, taking the box and placing it on Izuku's desk. Oh? Izuku was curious as to what exactly this was. He slid the box over towards himself and opened it up. And inside was something peculiar. It was a full-body robe, folded up inside the box. But it wasn't any average robe. It was a grim. Since it was folded up, all Izuku could see was the hood, but even then that was enough to identify it as one of Yami's creations. Firstly, the color scheme was the typical black and white that all Grimm had, with the fabric being entirely black, and there being the usual white bone armor that is present on every Grimm. Also, it had eyes. Glowing yellow eyes at the top of the hood, and teeth as well. Bone-like teeth at the bottom and top of the hood's opening for the face. As if it were more of a mouth than a hood. Is this a Grimm robe? Izuku asked. Right. Shiraku said, smiling at Izuku. We call it the Aegis robe. It's made to protect you in case you're in danger. Oh. Izuku took a second look at the robe. We ran my webs through Yami's Grimm vomit and used the threads to make this. I felt like some kind of wizard making a magic robe. Shiraku said, clearly very pleased with her work here. We tested it. It works. Yami said. Try it. Izuku thought. Well, it would be useful in protecting me if anything goes wrong. It'll make me look evil, but I guess that's just the price I pay for safety. Besides, if my kids can handle being judged by their appearances, I guess I can too. Alright, let me go in the room and change real quick, Izuku told them. After putting on the robe, Izuku took a good look at himself in the mirror. The robe covered his entire body head to toe, with the only part of his body exposed being his face and hands. The bottom of the robe touched the ground, but just barely, keeping his feet hidden without making walking difficult. There was also a bit of armor going down the side of the robe, but not much. The upper part of the robe was more heavily armored, with bone armor broken up into small armored pieces, covering most of the chest, with a big piece of bone armor covering the center. There was also some slim bone armor running down the top of the sleeves, but just a bit. On his back, there was that same bit of bone armor that went along his spine. Lastly, there was the hood itself. There were a lot of bits of bone armor, seemingly there to protect his head, and as mentioned earlier, there were also eyes and teeth around the front of it. One more thing of note about its appearance: when he put the hood up, it shrouded his face in complete darkness. No matter where he turned, or even if he shined the light directly in his face would never become visible. Meaning that it wasn't because of the lighting, this was simply an effect of the hood itself. Well, this is. Izuku looked behind him at the two kids, staring at him intently. Very nice. It was creepy looking. And he would definitely need to keep the hood down if he wore this while talking to people. Of course, he couldn't say that to them. And besides, it was at least comfortable. It was a bit heavy, but not overly so. The fabric was comfortable to the touch, very smooth. And it wasn't hot or stuffy either. In fact, it was unnaturally cool. It was a bit uncomfortable, but he'd get used to it. Great. So now you can wear it all the time, Shiraku said with a huge smile on her face. Forever, Yami added. Eh? Izuku was taken off guard by that a bit by this sudden proposal. Well, if you only wore it when you felt like you were in danger, then what's the point? Shiraku asked, crossing her arms. You wouldn't have felt like you were in danger when that girl came, and then she would have killed you. You have to wear the Aegis for it to protect you? That's a good point, Izuku said, as he gave it some more thought. Please daddy. Shirayuki begged, giving him the puppy dog eyes with her many eyes. At least wear it until we catch those rotten people who want you dead. It would make everyone feel better. Wear it, Yami commanded firmly. Izuku pondered that. The kids were worried about Izuku right now. Heck, One was worried about Izuku right now. And why wouldn't they be? Someone sent an assassin here, probably to kill him. And he couldn't just appease them by lying. He'd already done that before. They wouldn't believe him. Especially because it was such an obvious lie. But if he had some protection, some proof that he would be okay, then it would put the kids at ease. Now he has no idea if this would actually have stopped Nice from killing him. But Yami and Shiraku seemed to think it would have, and so would the rest of the kids most likely. And that would be good enough. Alright. I'll keep it on until they're caught. Izuku sighed. Yes. Thank you, Daddy. Shiraku said, running forward and embracing her father. You're welcome, sweetie. But Izuku paused. How do I wash this? Staff meeting. It was nighttime, now, and all of Class 1A, along with Inko, was in Izuku's office. Izuku himself was sitting at his desk, facing them all. And he was wearing the Aegis robe. Dude? Why do you look like a super boss from Kingdom Hearts? Kaminari asked. Yeah, it looks like you're plotting our collective demise, Mina added. Oh, this is the Aegis robe, Izuku explained, taking down the hood so they could see his face. It's something the kids made to protect me. They were worried about me after. Well, you know. I still can't believe someone sent a child to assassinate you, Momo said, looking rather sick at the thought. It just makes me sick, Mina said with a look of absolute disgust. Children aren't weapons, Shido added, with a hateful look in his eyes. It's so much worse than you think. Izuku felt his temper rising, as he recalled what Fu told him. But that's not why I called you here. As you all know, as the world has become more aware of DOC, OPCs, and my existence, reporters and the like have attempted to come here and ask questions. Yeah, but they not getting past the bouncers. Mina giggled, imagining a group of reporters seeing a Beowulf, and noping the heck out of there. Yes, well, we can't just ignore them, forever, unfortunately. Izuku sighed. They control much of the narrative, and how we're perceived by the public. DOC needs to make a statement about things sooner or later. And while I'm not directly a part of DOC, I'm very important to them. As such, DOC will be holding a press conference, featuring several important members of DOC including the head of the division, Oshiribashi. I will also be attending this conference. But you're still recovering. Okako objected. I've recovered enough, Izuku said firmly. If we don't speak up about certain things, then the media and the people will come up with their own conclusions. Rumors have already started circling around about this place. Fortunately, Kiba's streams are influencing most of them, so it's mostly positive, but not completely. We have to take control of the narrative, otherwise, it could lead to disastrous consequences in the future. Are you sure you'll be okay, dear? Inko asked worriedly. There could be more assassins out there. There'll be heroes around, so I think it'll be fine, Izuku said. And also I'll be wearing this, which should provide me some level of protection anyway. Are you about wearing that while trying to improve public perception? Jiro asked. It's kinda evil looking. Well, I won't be wearing the hood, so it won't look as bad, Izuku explained. And to be fair, people are more likely to judge me for being quirkless than they are for wearing this. That sucks. Mina grimaced. Yeah, well, it's unavoidable. Izuku sighed. That and my age are going to be the most difficult hurdles for people to get over. Hopefully, I'll be able to present a good argument as to why I was chosen for this job. While I have stated my disapproval for someone of your age taking on this position, I will admit you've done far better than most people even 3 times your age, Momo admitted. Yeah, man. Even the way you collapsed shows how much work you put in for these kids, Kirishima added. And that was manly as hell. Yeah, it was super dumb but also kinda cool, Kaminari said. No one doubts your capability, nor your determination Midoriya, only your mental health. Ida said. Thanks Ida, Izuku said, not really knowing how to respond to that. Well, the conference is in 2 days so I'll have some time to coordinate with DOC about what we'll be saying during the conference. That sounds like a lot of work, man. Are you sure you're not pushing yourself again? Sero asked. It's just a bunch of talking and thinking, Izuku said. And it's like I can really avoid this. Class 1A looked at Izuku worriedly, seemingly unsure of how much they could trust that statement. Izuku sighed. Look. I already agreed to do it. And canceling at this point would create, let's just say, problems that would cause me more stress and work than it would be to just go to the conference. Understood? Good. Now, I wanted to tell you all that I was going to be out 2 days from now, for a few hours. That's all. You're dismissed. Everyone still looked a bit worried but figured there wasn't much they could do about it and left the room. Except Okako, who stayed behind, looking pouty. Okako, I know that you don't like this but Izuku got cut off. No, it's just that. Okako interrupted. It's just. It doesn't feel like we've reduced your workload by that much. I still see you working pretty much every day. We were supposed to come here so you could relax. So what's the point of us being here if you're still working so much? Izuku took a moment to take in her grievance, before shaking his head at her. That's not true in the slightest. You guys have reduced my workload by so much it's insane. I actually have time to relax for a few hours and sleep for a healthy amount of hours. If I had a normal job, then you guys would have left me with nothing to do and then some. But I don't have a normal job. My job brings many benefits, and they vastly outweigh the negatives. But one of those negatives is that my work never ends, and much of it is too important to just let anyone do. Thanks to you guys I was able to rest for a while, but I can't do that forever. I guess you're right. Okako sighed, still looking upset. It just seems unfair that you have to be saddled with all this work, and you're still only 15. I mean, I've felt swamped with work before, but it was nothing compared to how much you have on your plate. Izuku couldn't help but smile a bit, feeling slightly touched at how much care she had for him. Okako. Don't feel too bad for me. I'm rich, I live in what is pretty much a mansion surrounded by miles of land that I own. I have great friends, one of whom is my childhood hero, and I have tons of kids who all adore me almost as much as I adore them. My life is great, and if I have to deal with a mountain of work just to sustain, then that's well worth it. Even that answer seemed unsatisfying to Uraraka. I just don't like seeing you in pain or exhausted, Okako admitted. I always loved seeing the effect heroes had on people. Seeing all those smiling faces in the crowd. It was amazing. But I always wondered who made the heroes smile? Who picks them up out of despair? I mean, it wasn't really my main goal. I mostly wanted to become a hero because of my parents, but I'd still like to be the one that makes even the heroes smile. And as far as those kids and I are concerned, you are a hero. And we all just want to see you smile. Now Izuku wasn't just slightly touched, he was very touched. It was hard to keep the tears back, as Izuku got up from his seat. Okako didn't notice this, however, as she had looked down to hide her red face. I mean, maybe that sounds a bit too sappy, but Izuku interrupted her by doing one of the most daring things he'd ever done. He wrapped his arms around her and gave her a hug. Eh? Okako was surprised by this sudden boldness coming from Izuku of all people. Izuku quickly ended the hug and gave her a flustered, red-faced smile. Just seeing you trying, for my sake, makes me smile on the inside. I all got off. Okiko's face was red as a tomato as she tried to stutter out words and completely failed. One day, I'll have everything figured out. And I won't be overworked, or be unused to anything, or have someone trying to kill me. Izuku continued, turning away and looking out the window. And when that day comes, and I can just sit back and raise my kids, and watch them grow ... then I'll be all smiles. But that future won't come if I don't build it. So I'll endure all those hardships, for the sake of that brighter future. Izuku paused a bit, blushing a bit more as he considered if he was really about to say what he was going to say. I don't know how hard things are gonna get, and you have your own path to go down, so I understand if one day you don't support me as much as you do now. But The teen dad took a deep breath and turned around to look at Okiko, before giving her a respectful bow. Thank you for all your support, Okiko Uraraka. Okiko was speechless for a bit, just looking at Izuku in shock for a few seconds before a smile crawled up her face, and a giggle escaped her lips. PSH. Ha ha ha. Huh? Izuku was confused and slightly scared at this response. You dummy. Okiko gave him a sweet, heartfelt smile, and gave him a slight flick on the forehead, causing him to flinch a bit, and stop bowing. Don't say things like that, as if you haven't done just as much, if not more for me. You helped me develop full cowling, you told me some things All Might should have told me a while ago, and of course, giving my parents work. Yeah, I have my own path I have to go down, but I intend to walk that path right alongside yours. We'll walk side by side, helping each other along our paths. Building out futures together. Because that's what best friends do. IYU. Izuku returned to being a blushing mess, but the smile that came on his face was unstoppable. You really are the best friend I could have ever asked for. Same to you. Okiko giggled. The two laughed together for a bit, before calming down. Well, I have to go make some calls. You should probably go to bed, Izuku told her. And don't worry, I'll get some sleep too. You better, Okiko warned him playfully, as she started taking her leave. Good night, Izuku. Good night, Okiko, Izuku said, as he watched her leave. It would take at least an hour for both their hearts to stop pounding. A pressing situation the day of the press conference had finally arrived, and boy was Izuku nervous. And how could he not be, staring at the army of the press in front of him, all snapping pictures with their cameras, and trying to ask hundreds of questions per second? Izuku was currently sitting in a small chair, alongside a bunch of other of DOC's important figures. He didn't really know any of them, but they all looked so professional and old. He felt so out of place. Which, to be fair, he was. It was probably so weird to see a bunch of old guys in suits, and in the middle of them was a 15-year-old in a strange robe. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all on such a wonderful day. At the front of the stage, they were all one, was Oshiribashi, standing at the podium, speaking through many microphones. A rotund old man that looked like he was in his late 80s. As many of you know, I am acting director of DOC, formerly known as OPCCC Oshiribashi. And I've come to talk today about our recent uprising in activity. The reports barely waited for him to finish before hurling more questions at him. Mr. Bashi, why is DOC suddenly acting now? Why the name change? What reason do you have for hiring a 15-year-old for such an important position? What position does Madara occupy exactly? Was hiring a quirkless person some sort of publicity stunt? Now settle down. Bashi told the crowd. All your questions will be addressed, I assure you. Now, first I would like to start with an apology. An apology? Many reporters were confused by this, and theories on what this was about broke out among the crowd. Yes, I would like to issue a formal apology to all the OPCs in this country, Bashi said, putting on a sad face. For years we have languished with little funds and little way to deal with the issues we were saddled with. We were unable to carry out our mission to help these children as effectively as we could have. Then Bashi turned back and looked at Izuku, signaling for him to come up, which he did, walking up to the old man's side, as the director of DOC put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, and he tried really hard not to flinch. That was until we met this wonderful young man, Izuku Midoriya, the new director of the Midoriya Foundation for OPCs. Of just the Midoriya Foundation for short. Bashi continued, smiling at the crowd, who were taking tons of pictures. For years we had been looking for someone to fill a position. Someone who had the drive and determination to provide for and protect these children, with a heart big enough to care for them all. And that someone is Izuku Midoriya. Immediately, the press started shouting out questions, all about Izuku's age. Now, I understand that he is quite young, very young in fact, but that should not disqualify him, by any means, Bashi stated firmly. Midoriya has displayed great courage and intelligence beyond his years and has a work ethic that puts him above many people, double, triple, or quadruple his age. Not to mention the children adore him, as he does them. As for questions about his quirklessness, that part had nothing to do with his position. The people of DOC believe in equality amongst quirks. Once again this caused a lot of questions and murmurs to erupt amongst the crowd. Now, I would like to give Mr. Midoriya a chance to speak to you all, Bashi said, patting Izuku on the back, signaling that he would now be taking over. Izuku looked over the crowd, all looking directly at him. He took a deep breath, and then breathed out. All right. I can do this. Izuku thought. Izuku opened his mouth, but unfortunately, he would never get a word out. As suddenly chaos would break out in the crowd. Once the reports nearly the front, suddenly took out a gun and pointed it at Izuku's face. Die quirkless scum. Remove your worthless genetics from this earth. The crowd around the man screamed and gasped, and Izuku was frozen in shock. But the robe wasn't. As the man pulled the trigger, the hood flew up, covering Izuku's head, as it switched to absolute defense mode. The armored parts of the hood expanded, covering more of Izuku's body, and, suddenly the teeth around the face expanded as well, growing in size as they completely covered his face, but also keeping him from seeing anything. Blam! The bullet fired at Izuku's face, but the teeth protected him, and the bullet bounced off. And then exploded. Kaboom! Izuku was sent flying back, and after a few seconds of air time, he felt himself skid along the ground, the robe still protecting him from harm until he came to a full stop. Once Izuku stopped, he remained on the ground, frozen. He couldn't even think for a little bit, as he had to wait for the shock to dissipate. What just happened? Izuku thought as his brain finally started working again. As Izuku was processing the now failed assassination attempt, he felt someone pick him. Midoriya? Midoriya, are you okay? Can you hear me in there? Izuku recognized that voice. It was Death Arms, one of the heroes that had been sent to act as security during the event. I'm fine, Izuku said. He was still a bit dazed, but he was mostly fine. The robe was still in protection mode, meaning Izuku still couldn't see anything. Death Arms helped Izuku off the ground, and onto his feet and his shaky legs. Kid, how on earth did you survive that, and what the hell are you wearing? It's a long story, Izuku responded. I really need to give Yami and Shuraku a hug when I get back. Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment, a man with a particularly long nose was sitting on his couch in his bathrobes, watching the TV. This man was Rukia Yatsubashi, CEO of Detonarat, and the leader of the Meta Liberation Army, Redistro. News is coming in. After taking a horrible attack at the hand of a quirkist assassin, Izuku Midoriya survived with little to no damage, thanks to the help of a special robe made by one of the orphanage's children. A newswoman reported crush. Redistro crushed the remote in his hand in anger, a bit of blackness crawling along his hand, and his eyebrow twitched as frustration, anger, and most of all, Stress built up inside him. Another failed attempt. Redestro thought. First, we lose Kiria, and now this. Now I likely won't have another chance to kill him for quite some time. Izuku Midoriya was an insult to everything the MLA stood for. The quirkless were unevolved relics of a bygone age. They should be at the bottom rung of society, and it should be made certain that their genes could not be passed on, one way or another. But yet here one was, not only massively wealthy and successful but also in charge of children who were inherently superior to him. He didn't even want to think of how their minds might be polluted by him and his unevolved views. The fact that Izuku Midoriya could only survive these attacks by hiding behind the children's quirks only proved his genetic inferiority. However, the MLA still had higher priorities than this. Far higher. But it was a matter of principle. Izuku Midoriya must die. Redestro glared hatefully at the screen, as he saw Izuku Midoriya go into a guarded car. One day, he would kill Izuku Midoriya. He swore it. Alright, so the villains were the MLA now. Why the MLA over other villains? Well, let's take a look at the other candidates for villains, and why they were not chosen. Stain. He's just a dude. He's a very important dude, with a lot of meaning to the story, and impact on the world of MHA, but he can't provide much of a physical threat to many of the characters, nor would he really want to, outside of bashing Kiba a bit. Also, he's just one guy, so any conflict with him would end pretty quickly, as it did in canon. The LOV and All for One, I already have a separate plan for the LOV that puts them on a very different path from canon. Meaning they won't be able to serve as the villains here. And since I'm doing what I'm doing the LOV, that means All for One will also be out of the story after a certain point. The Hero Public Safety Commission, no. Okay, let's clear something up. The HPSC did not brainwash Hawks, or turn him into a child soldier. Firstly, saying Hawks was turned into a child soldier, implies that they sent Hawks out to fight at a young age. Which they didn't. They just trained him. Which if that makes Hawks a child soldier, then Izuku is making child soldiers as we speak. Secondly, about the brainwashing part. Hawks wanted to be a hero, before the HPSC even knew he existed, and his loyalty to them likely comes less from brainwashing, and more from the fact that they lifted him and his mom out of poverty, and made all his dreams come true. Yes, they did do some shady stuff in the past, but sending child assassins is a completely different story and a whole new level of wrong from them that have yet to see. They aren't saints. Far from it, but they're more morally gray than they are straight up evil, at least they are now anyway. That guy Nagin killed was more evil than gray. The Creature Rejection Clan, who? I'm joking, of course. I know who they are, but they are such a minor thing in the manga, that the anime just skipped over them. To be fair, they would have a reason to oppose Izuku and his kids, but they are so minor that giving them the main villain role just seems off. A no-see group, okay, I'm not making it a no-see group, because I want to use more MHA elements. There are a lot of OCs and OC elements in this fic, to the point where sometimes it feels more like a separate story taking place in the MHA universe than an MHA fic, and making OC villains rather than using ones that were already a part of the universe would only add to that. Now, let's discuss why I chose the MLA. The main reason is that they correlate both with Izuku and the kids. With Izuku, the MLA looks down upon those with weaker quirks, so it stands to reason they would think very poorly of the quirkless. So seeing someone like Izuku not only be successful but also being in charge of people with powerful quirks, it's the antithesis to everything they stand for. Meanwhile, they would also hate the way society looks upon most of the OPCs. In their eyes, these are children who should be at the top of society, being pushed off into the corner, like something to be ashamed of. But they would also dislike these children being put in the same category as other OPCs. Let me explain. The MLA doesn't love all strong quirks. They think quirks also speak for who you are as a person, so people like Shigaraki, who has an inherently destructive and villainous quirk, they used to look down on as well, before the whole awakening debacle. So they would have an issue with children like Fu, Kei, and Kyoko growing up alongside Sansen, Kiba, and Kyozai, and being treated like siblings. So the MLA has plenty of reason to oppose Izuku and everything he stands for. This is why I choose them as the main villains. Now let's talk about the Aegis. This is an original Grimm idea that came from me. I'm not gonna be doing that often, I'll mostly take Grimm from RWBY, but I will come up with a select few originals. Also, let's answer a few questions about the Aegis right here. Firstly, this will become Izuku's main attire, because why wouldn't it? Izuku's job is naturally dangerous, so it makes sense for him to wear this often. Secondly, no, Izuku will not suddenly become a fighter. I wanted to keep Izuku mostly physically powerless. The Aegis is only here to make sure Izuku doesn't die in perilous situations, and because it looks cool, the Aegis is specially designed for defense only, and has no offensive capabilities. Thirdly, its capabilities will be explored more as the story goes on, but let's just say, Yami and Shiraku did a good job with this one. Lastly, Kiria is Nai's real name. We'll get more about her and her past much later. Chapter 72, Grimm Thoughts. Hey, so you guys know that the kids can't really use their quirks outside the house and forest, right? Like some people were saying there was gonna be a whole raid on K City, or that the kids were gonna mess up Distro. You guys know that while I do take certain liberties in what the characters can get away with, it's never to the extent to which the characters can destroy an entire city and get away with it. 95% of the fights will take place at the house or in the forest, or any other area Izuku owns, as those are the only places the kids can actually fight. And the other 5% will be special occasions, and none of them will be in public. Also, don't think of Distro more like a Saturday morning cartoon villain in how he attacks. He won't come there personally and try to kill Izuku. He'll just occasionally make a plan to ruin Izuku's day, and Izuku and the kids will stop it until he gets taken down. So don't expect Izuku and the kids to fight Distro himself, as trying to figure out a way to convincingly set up a scenario in which that makes sense is nearly impossible. Oh, and the next chapter 1, Don't Run an Orphanage, future is up. Check that out if you wanna see how Irei confronts her mom all those years later. Anyway, let's get into the story. Thinking Grimm, there was a bit of chaos at the house after the latest assassination attempt, but given how little Izuku was injured, he was able to quickly calm the kids and his mother by saying that he would be staying at the house more, and keeping the Aegis on full time. Well, this made them calm down. For the most part. Most of the kids had gone into high alert, determined to defend their home if need be. However, Yami had a different approach to this, Grimm creation of course. So, the next day, Yami decided to get together a think group, consisting of Fu, Kiba, Kyoku, and Shiraku. The 6 of them gathered in Yami's room, sitting in a circle, with Yami himself having a notepad on his lap, ready to write down ideas. Alright, well, if everyone is here, then let's begin, Kiba said, wanting to start as soon as possible. Not yet, Yami said. One more. Someone else is coming? Shiraku asked. Who? I don't recall anyone else agreeing to meet us here. Knock knock. Come in. Yami said, hoping that it was who he thought it was. Izuku opened the door and peeked his head in. Yami, your friend is here. The door opened up further, and Mei stepped inside. Hi Yami. Your house is big. Yami nodded. Mei. Well, I'll leave you all to whatever you doing here. Have fun, kids. Izuku said, before taking his leave. With Izuku gone, Mei decided it was time to introduce herself. Hello there. I'm Mei Nagai. Suddenly Mei stopped, as she spotted Kiba, and started staring at her in shock. Wait, is that Lady Kiba? Mei gasped. So you've heard of me? Kiba asked pridefully, sticking her chest out and crossing her arms, and you could almost visibly see her ego swell. Of course I have. I only discovered you recently, but I'm a huge fan. Amei said, her eyes full of excitement, as she rushed over to Kiba. I love your gaming videos. They're so much fun to watch while I do homework, although sometimes I get so distracted by them that I forget about my homework and end up getting in trouble. Well, of course, you would get distracted. I am far more interesting than any homework. Kiba smirked, getting up to meet Amei face to face. It is always good to meet a servant of mine. Know that your admiration is most appreciated. As is you taking care of my dear brother. Oh no, Lady Kiba. It was no issue at all. In fact, he was the one taking care of me. Amei said, blushing slightly as the excitement was getting to her. If you don't mind, could we play games together? Why, of course. It is my duty to indulge such a loyal servant after all. Kiba said haughtily. Just know that I won't go easy on you, my dear servant. I am a kind queen, but not a merciful one. I don't intend on losing. Even if it's to Lady Kiba. Amei said with a surprising amount of determination. Ahem. Fu fake coughed, getting both their attentions. Ladies, can we do what we came here to do, please? Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to be a distraction. Amei apologized. I was just greeting a fan, geez. Kiba huffed, before sitting back down. Fu rolled his eyes, before turning to Amei. You must be Yami's friend he made that day when he went to the city. Nice to finally meet you. Hello, new friend. I'm waved at her with a big grin on her face. Shraku. A pleasure, Shraku said, giving a nod. HMPH. Kyaku didn't look at her, not wanting to scowl at Yami's friend. I'm Fu, by the way. Now please take a seat. You can sit next to Yami. Fu told her. Alright. Amei quickly got over and sat next to Yami on the floor. So, Yami said we'd be coming up with grim ideas. That's right, we need to increase the security of the house, so, any ideas? Fu asked. I have a few. Kiba said. So I was thinking, one issue is that the Grimm we have patrolling are far too slow. So I was thinking, what if we made something faster? Like a saber-toothed tiger. Yami tilted his head, not knowing what that was. Here, let me show you, Fu said, taking out his phone and pulling up an image, before showing it to Yami. Yami took a good look at the picture, before jotting some things down on his notepad. Alright, next? Fu said, wanting to keep things moving. I have one. Shraku said. I was thinking of something more versatile. Like bats with razor-sharp claws and teeth. They won't be threatening on their own, but a whole swarm of them can be deadly. And they'd be small so they can go in places the bigger Grimm can't. In the skies, on the trees, in caves. And they'd be really loud too, so if they saw an intruder they can alert the seers. Oh, that's an amazing idea, said, giving Shraku a round of applause. Excellent, sister. A bat Grimm is a wonderful idea. Kiba praised. It has a lot of uses. I'm surprised we didn't think of it before now. Fu added. Yami nodded in approval, as he jotted the idea down. Oh, my turn. K jumped in. So, I was thinking we could do a snake. Fu had to stop himself from rolling his eyes. We already have a snake Grimm, it's in the vents. Eh? Amei looked up around the room, now knowing that there was just a snake Grimm crawling around in the walls. No, not like that one. I was thinking more like a snake dragon. A sea serpent dragon, clarified. That breathes lasers. Can we make something that breathes lasers? Kyaku asked. Yami shrugged. Maybe. We can try. Actually, the idea of a sea serpent is quite exciting. Kiba said with a huge grin. Something that guards the lakes of our forest is an excellent idea. But we should make it fly as well. We don't want someone escaping it by just getting away from the water, do we? Oh, good idea. A flying sea snake. Happily agreed. Something that can guard the lakes and the skies. Nice one. Fu praised. Leave it to come up with another version of a snake. Kyaku added. But now it's my turn. And I have a special idea. Kyaku then took out a piece of folded paper from her pocket, and unfolded it, revealing a rather well-done drawing, of a small grim creature, looking like a mix of a scorpion and a fish, but instead of a stinger, it had 3 bared blades for a tail. This is a sulfur fish. It's a lot like what Shrughu came up with. They're super tiny, and can't do much by themselves, but a lot of them can really make someone suffer. They have barbed blades on their tails, and they can get really, really hot. Hot enough to burn someone really bad. And if they're all together they can combine and turn into a big monster and swallow up all the people who want to hurt Daddy. That sounds like it would really hurt someone, Amei noted, taken aback by Kyaku's enthusiasm. I know, right? Kyaku said, looking at her with starry eyes. Everyone gave her strange looks, except Yami, who just jotted everything down. I apologize for her, she has issues, Fu explained. Hey! Kyaku glared at him, offended by his statement. Alright, does anyone else have an idea? Fu asked the room. There was a small pause before suddenly, a piece of paper suddenly appeared in the center of the circle. What was that? Amei asked, surprised by this, as most people would be. That was Mew. K explained, before waving. Hi Mew. He's super shy, so he doesn't like to show himself very often. Yeah, don't worry about it, Fu told her, before picking up the paper. Let's see what he dropped. He unfolded the paper, and inside was a short message. What about something that can go through the trees? Like a ghost? Can we make a ghost? Shrughu asked. What are the limits of what Yami's quirk can make? Yami shrugged again, as he wrote it down. I don't know. With lots of negativity. I can do almost anything. Except one thing. What's that? Amei asked, curious as to what could possibly be the limit of Yami's insane quirk. Can't create life, or make Grimm smart, Yami explained. Tried. Can't do it. Really? Don't Grimm have brains and stuff? Amei asked curiously. Grimm brain much worse than human brain. Can only take orders, can't do anything smart. Yami clarified. If only we could put a human brain inside a Grimm. Amei thought aloud. But where would we get a brain? There was a small moment of silence before everyone except Amei looked at Fu. Fu sighed, as he realized what would soon happen to him. Eh? Amei was confused. Why is everyone looking at Fu? Kiba and Shrughu got up, and walked over to Fu, staring down at him with a gleam in their eyes. Meanwhile, Fu just sat there and accepted his fate. Hey, what are you doing? Amei said as she watched the process begin. Turn around, Amei, Fu told her as the girls took hold of his head. You don't want to see what's gonna happen next. Grabbed Amei and turned her around, and once the blonde heard the sound of flesh being pieces and bones being broken, as well as other unsavory things, she was glad she wasn't looking. A Grimm showing. Izuku, Class 1A, and Inko were all sitting in chairs that were located in an opening in the forest, one by one of the lakes in the forest, all of them waiting there for something. Alright, I think everyone is here, Izuku said, looking around making sure everyone was present. Yeah, why are we here? Jiro asked. Well, Yami wanted to show off some new Grimm that, and ask for approval to use them for house security and utility, Izuku explained. And since you're all temporary house staff, I figured you should be here to see this as well. I see. Keeping staff informed of new development is a very important thing. Well done, Midoriya. Ida praised. I can't wait to see what kind of cool things Yami makes now. Mina said. Just as long as we don't have to fight any of them. I'm fine with it. Mineta added. It is rather interesting how many capabilities his quirk has, Momo noted. It's not simply just power, but also utility. It's potentially the most dangerous quirk here. It's scary alright. Kaminari agreed. Kid has an army. Everyone please take your seats. Kiba said, running out of the woods. The presentation is about to begin. Right. Izuku said, before sitting down with everyone else. After a few moments, Fu, Shuraku, Kiba, Amei, Kyaku, and Yami all walked into the clearing and looked at their audience. Thank you for coming everyone. For today's grim presentation, Kiba announced. After the terrible incident that happened yesterday, we decided we needed new Grim, to better protect the house. Shuraku explained. And, so we all had a brainstorming session. And we created the creatures you see before you. Starting up. We have the Sabir. Kiba said. A creation I gave the idea for. Then from the trees, a grim saber-toothed tiger ran out, leaping into the clearing for everyone to see. Oh wow, that thing is terrifying. Mina said with a bit more cheer than you'd expect. This creature was made to be quick. And, move through the forest faster than any other grounded Grim. Kyaku explained. No one escapes. It can also climb trees, Fu added. And it's ordered to retreat and get back up if it feels it can't take someone down on its own. It'll chase intruders down until they get desired. Pun. So its primary use is finding intruders. An excellent idea on your part. Well done children. Ida said, giving applause. Good job Lady K. Taru shouted. It's fierce as well. Just like you. Oh and you too Yami. Thank you. Thank you. Kiba said, taking in the praise. Moving on, Fu said, not wanting Kiba's head to get much bigger. Shuraku you're up next. Right. Shuraku then clapped her hands, before holding her hand up. Then a small bat-like Grim flew out, and then perched on Shuraku's finger. This has been named, a Ravager, Shuraku said. It can fly around, and it's small enough to even fly through the forest, or in caves. It'll drive anyone who comes here looking for trouble, Batty snickered. Yeah but, it's kinda tiny isn't it? Kaminari asked. Not really sure if the name, Ravager fits here. Shuraku did not look impressed with Kaminari's statement and then gave Yami a look. Why don't we show him how these things truly function? Yami nodded, before looking at Kaminari. Ravagers swarmed him. And then, suddenly, Ravagers flew out from all sides of the clearing and swarmed Kaminari. Ah. 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 I take it back. I take it back. Kaminari jumped out of his seat and started running around panicking, as the small Grim kept menacing him. Kids, Izuku said, giving them a warning glare. Sorry, Dad, Yami said, before giving his next order. Stop, and retreat. The Ravagers ceased their swarming, and went back into the forest, with one of them going to Yami, and landing on its head. As you can see, just because they're small, does not mean they aren't deadly. Kiba explained. In numbers, they're a terrifying wave of razor-sharp claws and teeth. Lastly, they have one last function, Fu explained. They have an extremely loud scream, that can be heard for very long distances. So if they spot an intruder, it's almost guaranteed that we or the other Grim will be alerted. We won't show this now, because Miss Jiro would most likely be in great pain if we did. Thanks for thinking of me kids. Jiro gave them thumbs up, really glad that at least one of them was thoughtful enough to know not to do this. I really appreciate it. Fu nodded. Moving on, I believe your Grim is next. Right. K bounced on her heels, excited to reveal the Grim she helped create. She hopped over to the edge of the lake. You can come out now. We don't want this to drag on. Just a moment later, something erupted out of the water. What came out was a massive serpent head, and a bit of its body. It looked like your classic Chinese, snake-like dragon, mustache, and everything. Only in Yami's colors. It was by far the most massive Grim that they had been shown today, was one of the more massive ones in general, as even just the upper half of its body towered over all of them. I was wrong. I'm not fine with this. Mineta shouted as he and Kaminari held each other, shaking in fear. Oh, dear. Inku almost fainted, this having been the first time she had seen such a massive Grimm. Did it need to be that big? Shinso asked. Oh wow. That's something. Okako gave a nervous laugh. Izuku at this point was completely desensitized to Grimm and how they could look, and looking at this purely from a use's standpoint. So, this is supposed to guard the lakes then? For the most part. This is called the Siphialong, Kiba announced. But despite its name, it's not limited to just the water. Would do the honors? Yes. Shouted with excitement, before turning to the Siphialong. Now. Fly. Be free. Suddenly the armor on the Fialong's back shifted, and wings sprouted out of its back before it took to the sky. The Grimm roared, as it flew gracefully in the air. Meanwhile, everyone was looking at it with wide eyes, surprised that this thing could now freaking fly. Well. At least it's versatile, Izuku said. Why did it need to fly? Mineta whispered in fear. Welp, at least we don't have to fight it, Jiro said. Yeah, imagine trying to fight a flying snake. Sero laughed nervously. What else does it do? Breath fire? Nope. It's a bit more electrifying. Giggled. Eh? Responded the entire class. Yami snapped his fingers, and the Fialong looked upwards and opened its huge maw. Then, an orb of electricity charged in its mouth, crackling with energy, before it shot out as a beam of electricity into the sky. This seems like overkill, Su noted. I mean, it's useful, Izuku said. Although I don't see us needing all too many of these. Maybe just one. Man, I feel bad for the villain that attacks this place, Sato said to himself. But next we have my idea. Kyaku said. Come out, little fishies. Then, from the ground, dozens of sulfur fish popped out the ground, all crawling in front of the audience. Oh, I don't like, Taru whispered. I don't like that at all. Are their tails heated? Todoroki asked. And barbed? Momo added with concern. Yup. Kyaku said. These are super duper hot. Meaning they can tear through people's skin and flesh like butter. And make it hurt too. Well, that's concerning, Tsu stated bluntly. I really need to get her to a therapist. Izuku thought. Oh god, that's so disturbing. Sato cringed as he thought about those things crawling on him, stabbing him with superheated tails. What a way to go, Kaminari said as he imagined the same thing. Oh. And they can do one more thing. Kyaku said, before clapping her hands. Now. Transform. On cue, suddenly all the sulfur fish started to huddle together, grouping up until they were an amorphous mass of black and white. Eventually, this mass took shape, like a giant tube-like beast, with a huge, gaping maw. Why do these have to get scarier? Mineta shouted. Why? Why was this necessary? It's really cool though, in a messed up way, Mina said. To be fair, all the other kids aside from Kyaku, Fu, and Yami seemed at least somewhat disturbed by this thing, with the Mai actively moving behind Yami. Moving on, Fu said. We have two more. The second to last is something Mew came up with, actually. Mew. Who was that again? Kaminari whispered to Jiro. It's the ghost kid we haven't seen, Jiro told him while rolling her eyes. Really? This should be interesting. Izuku said. Come out, Yami ordered. Stomp. 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 The forest shook, as massive footsteps could be heard getting closer to all of them. Oh, what abomination are they sending here now? Sero asked. Whatever it is, it's huge. And dense too. It sounds like walking boulders. Jiro said. You could say that. Because this next Grimm really rocks. Joked. It's the afterlife of the party. Introducing. Stomp. Coming into the clearing, was a massive golem, made almost purely of stone. With the only exception being the Grimm bone mask. The creature was separated into 5 parts. The body, 2 arms, and 2 legs. And the parts weren't connected to each other, rather they seemed to be connected by some invisible force. Interesting, Izuku said, slightly confused. I didn't think you could make Grim like this. Oh, the rocks are part of the Grim. They are merely an armor. Kiba explained. This is its true form. Suddenly, the mask flew out of the golem, and what came out was a ghost-like Grim. The boulders fell to the ground, and the Grim floated down, showing off its ghostly body. This is called a Geist, Fu explained. It's like a ghost. It can fly, turn intangible, and possess objects. Not people though. Only objects. This could also be pretty useful. Izuku muttered. Have to praise Mu later when I can find him. Now, we have something very, very special. Kiba said with glee. The brainchild of Amai, Fu, and Yami. Amai blushed. All you, I didn't do much. Not true. You gave us idea. Yami told her. You helped. You did good. Yami lightly patted her on the back, causing her to blush even more. Giggled. Brainchild. Good one sis. Wait what? No. Kiba shouted out in horror as she realized she just gave a clever pun. I didn't, introducing the hound. Kyaku said. Chapter 73, Security Plan. The last Grim to come out of the forest wasn't quite what they were expecting. It was very canine-like. Much like a Beowulf, but also very different. It was a bit bigger than a Beowulf, as well as being more dog-like than wolf-like. Its body was also much less armored. In fact, the only armor on it was around its snout, with some bone-like spikes coming out of its spine and shoulders. But the most notable difference was that its body seemed less solid. Like Yami's Grim vomit had only half solidified while making it. It wasn't a liquid per se, it looked more like melting ice cream than anything. That thing is super creepy, Taru said. It looks like something you'd see in a horror movie. Mina said, giving the creature a good hard look. I kinda like it. You have such weird taste, Kaminari told her. This is likely Yami's most versatile and impressive Grim yet, Fu explained. You see, up until now, we were never able to make an intelligent Grim because their brains just aren't capable of that. But, Amai had the idea of sticking a human brain into Yami's Grim vomit, and seeing what happens. What happened was this. Wait, where did you get a human brain? Okako asked. Yeah, please don't skim over that part, Su added. Oh, we just opened Fu's skull and took out his brain, Shiraku explained. It took us a few tries to do it right, but we eventually got it right. That's fascinating, Izuku said. Ignoring the part where you cut open your brother's head and took out his brain. God, this place is weird, Kaminari commented. It's essentially like replacing parts in a computer so it runs better, Izuku explained. Using Fu's brain as a processor, you can make a Grim much smarter than it otherwise would be. That's actually rather interesting, and also disturbing, Momo added. This Grim can use its intelligence, and its special body, to adapt to almost any situation, Shiraku explained. Although it is blind, it has an enhanced sense of smell and hearing, so it can track people down extremely well, Fu explained. I think the best way to show off its abilities would be to have someone fight it. Anyone want to try? Kirishima raised his hand. I'll do it. Alright, please come over here, and prepare yourself for battle. Kiba told him. Kirishima got up out of his chair, and the children stepped back to give the two fighters some room. The Hound and Kirishima faced off against each other, as Kirishima got into a fighting stance. Defeat him. Don't kill, don't hurt him permanently. Yami ordered. The Hound gave a growl of affirmation, before lunging at Kirishima. Kirishima raised a hardened arm, and the Hound bit down on it. The fake redhead gritted his teeth, as he felt the pressure of the Grim's jaw come down on his arm. It was strong, but not that strong. Kirishima punched the Grim in its unprotected chest, and felt his fist sink into its body, like punching goop. Huh? The student retracted his fist and looked down at the indent he left in the grim, as it quickly regenerated. The hound then jumped back, before lunging back at Kirishima, with its claws, slashing his chest. Kirishima hardened his chest, and the slashes bounced off. Grrrr. The hound jumped back again, and paused for a few seconds, seemingly thinking about its next approach. "You're gonna have to try harder than that to scratch me," Kirishima shouted. The hound kept still for a few more seconds before suddenly, it started to change. There was a sickening cracking noise, as the hound's body transitioned from canine to a more humanoid form. As its limbs extended, and its physiology changed to one that would walk upright instead of on all fours. Its hands also changed from paws to human-like hands with claws. Lastly, on the side of its neck, it grew gills. "Oh, that is so creepy," Kirishima said before he saw the creature lunge at him again. But instead of clawing at him, it grabbed him and held him up to his chest. Then the hound turned towards the lake and jumped in. Splash! Both of them entered the water, and then, things went silent for a minute. Everyone started getting more nervous as time went on, wondering if they would come back up. Splash! Kirishima was thrown onto land on his back, desperately struggling for breath. A second later the hound jumped out of the water and pinned Kirishima to the ground with one of its hands, before raising its other claw, ready to strike him down. "Stop," Yami ordered, causing the hound to halt its actions immediately. Mina immediately got up and ran over to Kirishima. "Kiri, you okay? You still breathing?" Kirishima spit out some water and took some more deep breaths. "Yeah. I'm fine." "So, what do you think? Amazing, right?" Kiba asked the audience. Meanwhile, the audience was dead silent. After a little bit, Izuku got up and broke the silence. "All right everyone, you've seen what the Grim can do, you can take your leave now. I'd like to speak to my kids." Class 1A, as well as Inko, agreed, because something was clearly on his mind, and left to give Izuku and the kids some privacy. Once everyone had left, Izuku turned to the kids. "Alright, so firstly I want to say, you all did a great job designing the new Grim." Izuku started off. "There is a lot of creativity and thought that was shown here, and I'm proud of that." All the kids started looking prideful, happy to receive the praise, except for Mei who looked bashful, and Yami and Fu who remained neutral. "But," Izuku added, "we can't just have these Grim in the forest as normal security alongside the Seers and Balfs." "Eh?" Most of the kids seemed shocked and confused by that statement. "Why not?" Kyaku asked, complained with a pout. "Because currently, the Grim are ordered to capture anyone who trespasses past the signs in the front. And if they get too close to the house, or if they attack one of you, they will attack the trespasser," Izuku explained. "They're ordered not to kill, but that doesn't mean they can't do it accidentally. And accidentality killing someone is a very easy thing to do if your method of attacking is shooting a giant laser at them, crushing them with rocks, or lashing them with barbed tails that are red hot. Seriously, Kyaku, we talked about not hurting people." Kyaku crossed her arms. "HMPH. And Grim aren't that smart. Except for the Hound, none of those Grim would know not to use those attacks on people who would get killed by them." Izuku continued. "The Sabirers, Ravagers, and the Hound are fine, but the rest are too deadly to use as normal security." The kids thought about it for a bit and realized that Izuku was right, and looked a bit ashamed of themselves for not realizing that. Except for Kyaku. Kyaku had no regrets. "Look, the Fialog, Geist, and Sulphurfish are great Grim, and I'm sure they can help for Yami's hero work, or as security in extreme cases," Izuku explained. "I've been thinking of something called security levels. And some of these Grim could be used at higher levels, but not at level 1. The kids looked confused, unsure exactly what Izuku was talking about. Izuku sighed. "Okay, I can only really explain it when I figure it all out myself. Just give me some time, and I'll explain it to you later. For now, Just hide the Grim away, and get ready for lunch. The kids nodded, all feeling a bit conflicted about how this all panned out. The next morning, the kids from yesterday's Grim presentation were called up to Izuku's office, with the exception of Amei who had gone home yesterday. In Izuku's office was Izuku at his desk, and at his side was Iida, Momo, and Okuko. On Izuku's desk was a big map of the house and the surrounding forest. "Kids, come in, Izuku told them. "Come here, let me show you something." The kids all walked up to Izuku's desk, looking at him attentively. "All right, do you remember what I was telling you about security levels yesterday?" Izuku asked them. All the kids nodded, except Kiba, who shook her head for a moment, saw that everyone else remembered, and then nodded, despite not actually remembering. "Okay, so the security levels are essentially measuring how bad a situation is, and what means we should take to defend ourselves," Izuku explained. "It's important to have things like this established. Otherwise, you could find yourself overdoing your security, and getting people hurt unnecessarily." Iida told them. "So let's start with level 1. This is the state the house will be in, most of the time," Izuku said, before pointing to the map. "Do you see this? This is the entrance to our property. This is the limit of where normal people can go before they are considered trespassing, and thus we can use quirks to defend ourselves. I have signs put up, warning people to turn back. So if they keep going, they either didn't see the signs, or they meant to trespass. That means they enter security level 1. During security level 1, we don't want anyone getting hurt. So the Grim used our commanded exclusively to capture intruders, without harming them," Momo explained. "As such, we decided that the Grim that can be used at this level would be limited to Sabirers, Creeps, Griffons, Ravagers, and Seers. As well as, of course, the Hound." "Oh, I get it. You limiting the Grim that can be used at certain levels, so that way people don't get hurt, but at higher levels, we'll use more Grim because the situation is worse," Fu realized. "That's right, Fu. Good job," Izuku praised, before pointing at another spot on the map. "If an intruder gets here without getting captures, or shows violent intent, then we move to security level 2. Which is when the Grim will be allowed to attack, to try and stop them. At this level, we decided that now, Balfs, Borbot Husks, King Taijutsu, and Ursa can be used. Level 3 is when they're getting way too close to the house, or one of you. This is when we're sure that they're dangerous, we need to take them down," Okuko explained. "All the kids will be told to get inside, and the amount of Grim that'll be used will be expanded, including Birngels, Blind Worms, Sentinels, Deathstalkers, Geists, Goliaths, and Manticores. And then we arrive to level 4. Iida jumped in. "It's at this point when the entire situation becomes dangerous, and we're willing to seriously harm an intruder in order to stop them. This is when Sulfurfish, Fialongs, Nucaleaves, and Wyverns. I already started constructing barracks throughout the forest. These will contain most of the Grim that won't be surveying the forest normally," Izuku said, before taking out a piece of paper and handing it to Yami. "Yami, do you think you can make these? Just tell me if you think any of it is too much." Yami looked at the paper, and all the kids crowded around him to take a look. The paper itself listed Grim and the amount Izuku wanted to be made. 50 Balfs, 20 Ursa, 15 Birangel, 6 Blind Worms, 20 Borbot Husk, 25 Sentinels, 30 Creeps, 10 Deathstalkers, 5 Geist, 10 Goliaths, 30 Griffons, 2 Hounds, 10 King Taijutsu, 10 Manticores, 2 Nucaleaves, 50 Ravagers, 30 Sabirers, 5 Fialongs, 100 Seers, 123 Sulfurfish, 1 Wyvern. This isn't the amount of Grim I want you to make. This is just the amount of Grim I'd like to use for security," Izuku clarified. I'd have to count the amount of Grim we're already using for security, but it would still be well over 100 Grim. Do you think you could do it? Yami took a good hard look at the list, before looking up at Izuku. Need to go to the city more. Absorb bad feelings. I'm sure I can arrange something, Izuku said, thinking of ways to keep Yami safe while he went out. To think we'll have an army that big at our beck and call. Kiba grinned. Excellent. Well, at least we'll be safe, Shuraku said. And that's what matters. Catted. Kyoko was overall satisfied. She would have liked to see her sulfur fish used a bit more, but at least they were being used. Alright then, Yami, I call you when we want to make the Grim. For now, go and enjoy yourselves. Thank you for trying to protect the house. I appreciate it very much. Izuku smiled at them, making sure they felt appreciated. The kids smiled back, and happily exited the room, to get on with their days. And thank you, guys, as well, for helping me plan everything, Izuku said to the 3 hero students. As a future hero, it's my pleasure to assist in making sure people are safe. Ida said. The same goes with me, Okako said with a grin. I must also agree with them, but something tells me this isn't the end of the work needed for the security system. Momo surmised. Well, you're right, Izuku admitted. I've been talking to All Might, and he said he could get me in contact with David Shield. Wait, David Shield? As an award-winning researcher, and leading mind in support gear development, that David Shield? Momo asked. The very same. Izuku smiled at the thought of getting to meet such a famous and important man in Hero Society. I want to see if I can purchase some security equipment from there. That's smart, Momo told him. Did the police figure out who sent the assassins yet? Ida asked him. Having a strong security system is very well and good, however, it's also important to determine who is it that wants you dead, and make sure they're sent to prison. Izuku shook his head. Unfortunately, Nise is still unconscious, and the assassin is refusing to talk. No one can figure out his motives, other than he's a quirk supremacist, and I'm quirkless. But he's not related to Nise, nor did he actually know her personally, meaning he didn't send her. So the mastermind is still out there, Okako said with a grim expression. Ugh. Can't we just read his mind or something? That would be a violation of human rights. You can't read someone's mind or memories unless you have probable cause to believe it has already been altered. Ida explained. And you don't need to have your memories altered to be a quirk supremacist, just a lack of human decency. Don't worry, Okako. We will get through this. Izuku said confidently. I promise you. I'm not going to get killed by bigots. I know you won't. I won't let them. Okako promised. When will you be meeting with Shield? Momo asked. Just before I-Expo. I got my hands on an invite, so I'll be going there with the kids. Izuku explained. That's still quite some time away though, so for now, all I can do is wait. Well, actually I'm gonna need to test out the Grim security system first. But how? Ring ring. Ring ring. Izuku took out his running phone from one of his robe's pockets and looked at the caller. Nezu. Why would the principal be calling now? Momo asked. Izuku answered the call and put the phone up to his ear. Hello? Hello Mr. Midoriya, I heard you were improving your security, Nezu said. Izuku's eyes widened in shock. How did you? Ida gives me regular reports about what and his classmates are doing over there, Nezu explained. Ah. That makes sense, Izuku responded. Well, you're right, we just finished about an hour ago. Why? Would you like to test this system? Nezu asked in a tone that sent chills up Izuku's spine, but also made him curious. What do you have in mind? Izuku asked. He could hear Nezu grin over the phone. Well, I happen to have another hero course class that could use some experience fighting against varied abilities, Nezu explained. I think we can help each other here. Chapter 74, The B-Team Part 1. Okay, before we start, Let's give a rundown of Class 1B and their abilities, in case you forgot about them. Yasetsu Awace, Welding. Senkai Bara, Drilling. Togaru Kamakiri, Blades. Shihai Kuroro, can hop into black things. Itsuka Kendo, Big Hands. Uekodai, shrinks things. Kanoko Komori, Shrooms. Ibara Shiozaki, Vine Hair. Jiroda Shishida, Beast. Niranjiki Shoda, Double Hit. Ponitsu Natori, Horns. Kozai Tsuburabo, Solitaire. Tetsu, Steel. Setsuna Tokage, splitting up her body. Manga Fukudashi, Physical Atomatopia. Juzo Hanuki, Mud. Kojiro Banto, Glue. Ndo Monoma, Copy. Reiko Yanagi, Moving People-Sized Objects. Huririn, Shooting Scales. And that's it. Obviously, it's not a full description of what their quirks do. This is just a reminder. Anyway, on to the chapter. Vlad King didn't like whatever was going on here. He had no idea what Nezu had planned, but as he and his class stood at the edge of Midoriya's forest, he just had a feeling in his gut that something was up here. "Sensei, you still haven't told us exactly what we're doing here," said Class 1B representative Itsuka Kendo. "Yeah, no offense sir, but you just kinda dragged us into a forest and didn't answer any of our questions on the ride here," Setsuna said, sounding as irritated as she looked. Vlad sighed. "Alright, well now that you're here I guess it's time to tell you what exactly this exercise is." The class looked at him attentively, ready to finally know what was going on. "Your mission is to reach the center of this forest," Vlad explained. There was a small pause, as the class waited for Vlad to continue. He didn't. "Wait, that's it?" Kamakiri asked. "That's all there is to this? Walking through a forest?" "No, there is much more to this than or even I know." Vlad sighed. "All Nezu told me was that you have to get to the center of this forest. There's a rather large house there so you'll know when you've reached it. To be fair, it's a rather large forest, so it's going to take you a while." "Well, that is rather ominous," Shishida said with a thoughtful expression. "Whatever Nezu has planned, we'll take it down." Tetsu shouted with furious determination. "Yeah. We will win." Pony agreed. "Keep that attitude," Vlad told them. "But be cautious, if the look of glee Nezu had on his face is any indication, then this won't be easy." "Yes, sensei," shouted the class. "So, how long do you think it'll take us to get to the middle?" Setsuna asked. "I have no idea," Kendo admitted. "Sensei said it's a big forest, so it could take most a couple hours." "Yeah, well, we better run into something interesting soon, because this fucking boring," Kamakiri complained. Now, patience is key. "We've only been walking for 10 minutes, Monoma reminded him. "If you start losing your mind before the real test even starts, then you're no better than mutts like Bakugo Katsuki." Sen rolled his eyes. "Unnecessary comments aside, Monoma's right. Calm your jets. I'm sure we'll encounter some opposition sooner or later." Shishida paused, as suddenly, the class encountered something. Floating in front of them was a seer. "What the hell is that?" Setsuna asked with mild disgust. "I don't know, but stay back," Kendo warned her classmates. "We don't know if it's a threat. I say we cut it open and find out," Kamakiri said with a smirk, as he formed two blades on his arms. The seer made some clicking noises, and its orb glowed red a bit. Creepy." Pony shivered. "What should we do?" Bondo asked fearfully. "Just stay still. No, one move," Kendo told her class. "Yug." Kamakiri groaned with irritation. Nothing happened for a minute, just them waiting and the seer continuing to float there. Until suddenly, they hear something, running through the forest, towards them on all sides. Suddenly, they were surrounded by 10 sabiers. "What the are these, some kind of saber-toothed tigers?" Kozai asked, panicking slightly at the sight of them. "They're demonic," Ibara commented with disgust, as she got ready for combat. We're surrounded. Rin pointed out, as he readied his scales. That orb thing must have called them. Kamakiri said, told you we should have sliced it. Alright, everyone get ready. Kendo told her classmates. If they attack, then you fight back. Until then, stay in defensive positions. We still don't know how this exercise is supposed to work. Pony aimed her horns, ready to fire at a moment's notice, while Shishida activated his quirk, along with Tetsuya Tetsu. I'll take this. Monoma touched Tetsuya Tetsu and Juzo, before moving on to touch Kuroro and Kamakiri. Class 1B got into a defensive position and got ready to fight back when attacked. But the sabers never attacked. Instead just holding their positions, while growling menacingly at them. They're not moving. Sen pointed out. I know. But why? Kendo took a moment to think. Setsuna, can you get a bird's eye view of what's going on around us? Gonna be hard with all these damn trees, but I'll try, Setsuna said, as she split her eyes off her body, and let them fly up into the air. She looked down, and it was in fact hard to see with all the trees in the way, but fortunately, black and white were easy colors to spot against green. Setsuna could see Grim coming towards their position, and lots of them too. Even worse, she looked up briefly and saw that there was a flock of griffons coming towards them as well. Shit, Setsuna said. What? What's happening? Kendo asked. They're waiting for reinforcements. They've got more, lots more of these tiger things, and some weird bird things coming from above. Setsuna told her classmates, as her eyes came back down and reconnected with her body. We need to move. Now. Otherwise, we'll be hopelessly outnumbered and surrounded. Oh shit. Manga said, his head turning into an exclamation point. Alright, everyone charge forward. Don't try to take them on all at once, just run. Kendo ordered, before charging forward. Kendo smacked the two sabers that stood in front of her, out of her way, allowing her and the others to run forward. The sabers started running behind them, and they were fast, meaning that they couldn't escape them by just running away. Juzo, slow them down. Kendo ordered. Got it. Juzo took a second to stop, and touch the ground behind them, softening it, and turning it to something mud-like. The sabers sunk into the mud and got stuck, unable to traverse the now soft ground. While this was happening, Setsuna had her eyes separated from her body again, and they were looking down on them to see what was coming up around them. We got two more coming up on our sides. Setsuna told her classmates. One on our left. One on our right. All right. My turn. Kamakiri shouted as he ran to the right, and Monoma ran to the left, using Kamakiri's quirk to grow blades out of his arms. Rah! Two sabers jumped out at them from either side. Slice. Monoma and Kamakiri sliced their heads in half, killing them instantly, and causing them to fade away. Alright. With Setsuna watching over us, nothing can surprise us now. Tetsuya Tetsu shouted. Yeah, unless something comes from underground, Setsuna told them. Then, suddenly, a few yards in front of them, about 12 creeps burst out of the ground to block them. You just had to jinx it, didn't you? Kuroro scowled. I got this, Kendo said, enlarging her hands. No, allow me, Lady Kendo, Shishida said. The well-spoken beast enlarged himself, and ran down on all fours like an animal, and led a feral charge towards the creeps. Rat! Shishida knocked all the creeps away like bowling pins with his massive arms, clearing a path. Move out of the way. Kendo smacked aside what remaining creeps were around, which let the class run along without issue. Those bird things are coming, Setsuna said, getting her eyes lower to the ground so they didn't get attacked by the griffins. Kendo looked up and saw 12 griffins coming down at them. Rin. Pony. Shoot them out of the sky. Aim the unarmored parts. Rin and Pony aimed upwards and started firing scales and horns at the flying beasts. The attacks pieced the mostly unarmored Grim, and they couldn't hold against the rapid-fire projectiles, dying off and fading away before they could even get close. Setsuna, find us somewhere that's safe. Kendo knew they couldn't run forever, they'd have to take a break sooner or later. Got it. Setsuna said, getting pretty tired herself. They're doing pretty well, all things considered, Izuku said to Nezu over a video call. Izuku was alone in his office, looking at a seer that would show him Class 1B's progress. He couldn't see everything they did, but he could see enough. I would hope so. The Grimm are only set to capture, not attack yet. It would be very concerning if they couldn't even get past opponents that weren't trying to hurt them. Nezu responded. Although I think it's time we moved on to level 2. Don't you think? I agree, Izuku said before he spoke into the orbs. Increase security level to level 2. Eventually, Class B found a small cave to rest in, and everyone sat down to take a small break. I feel like my lungs are gonna explode, Banto said while trying to catch his breath from all the running. What the hell were those things? Manga asked, his head turning into a question mark. Demons. Demons straight from hell. Ibara said. Normally I'm not with the whole religious thing, but I have to agree with Ibara here, Kozai said. Clearly those are the obstacles Principal Nezu sent to stop us, Kendo said. I feel like I've seen them before, Pony said, making a slight error in her speech. Really? Where? Oase asked. I don't remember. Pony shrugged. Sorry. It's fine, Kendo assured her. For now we need to figure out a plan. I say we stop running and cut them up, Kamakiri said. We killed those things easily enough, let's just kill them all and get to the middle of the forest. We have absolutely no idea how many there are of those things, Juzo pointed out. Not to mention we don't even know if we've seen every type of whatever those are. There was that weird orb thing, those tigers, some kind of griffins, and some weird underground dinosaur things. Sen listed. They can attack us at all angles, so whatever we do, we have to do it carefully, Kendo said. Kendo was interrupted by a rumbling from above before a boulder slammed down in front of the cave entrance, plunging the cave into complete darkness. They found us. Manga shouted. We're sealed in, Banto pointed out. Guys, Setsuna said, as she saw yellow eyes from deeper inside the cave, coming towards them. Kia. Suddenly Ravagers swarmed them, attacking them with their claws and teeth. The class all tried to swat them away, but that didn't really do much. No one used their quirk. You might hit someone else, Kendo ordered, as she got scratched and bit up. Then what the hell are we supposed to deal with these things? Kamakiri asked while also getting attacked. Some of her classmates ignored the order. Kiroro used his quirk and jumped into the wall, staying safe from the Ravagers' attack. Same with Tetsu and Monoma. While Yui just tried to use her quirk on whatever she could touch. It didn't affect living creatures, so her classmates were safe. She just needed to shrink the boulder blocking the entrance to the cave. However, as she swung her hands around wildly trying to use her quirk, she noticed something. It was working on whatever was attacking them. That meant that whatever was attacking them, presumably the same kind of things that were attacking them outside, wasn't technically alive, and thus she could use her quirk on them. While this was good to know, it didn't help her much in this situation, given she was fighting a swarm, but she knew who this could help. Yanagi. My quirk works on these things, Yui shouted. What? Yanagi was confused for a second before she realized that if Yui's quirk worked on them, that meant they weren't alive, which means she could use her quirk on them. To test this out, she activated her quirk on the things attacking her, forcing them off of her and suspending them in the air. It worked, and the Ravagers were powerless against her quirk. Still, she would need to know where the rest of them were in order to stop them. My quirk works, but I need more light, Yanagi shouted. I'm trying. Yui was still looking to the exit, and eventually, she saw a sliver of light creaking out, and so Yui ran towards it, and put her hands on the boulder. shrinking it down to about half her size. Light flooded the cave, finally allowing everyone inside to see. Immediately Yanagi used her quirk and stopped all Ravagers that were attacking everyone, and brought them all together into a big ball. Kendo enlarged her hands, brought them on either side of the Ravagers, and clapped with all her might, crushing them all in one fell swoop. After that, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone but Monoma, Tetsu, and Kuroro was covered in scratches and bite marks and were very much wishing for this exercise to be over already. Don't lower your guard, if they found our location then they'll likely send more, Kendo told them. We need to move, fast. Too late, Yua said as she looked outside the cave. What? Kendo ran outside to see what Yui was talking about, and when she reached the exit, she froze. Shit. Outside the cave was an army of sabers, creeps, griffins, Bowfs, Borbot husks, King Taijutsu, and Ursa waiting for them, blocking their path completely. Oh come on! Kozai complained as the rest of the class looked at the army they would be facing. Well, looks like Kamakiri's gonna get his wish, Sen said. Finally. Kamakiri seemed more excited than anything. A real fight. We are going to die, Yua stated in her normal monotone. Not on my watch. Kendo said, everyone get ready. Our goal is to escape. Staying to fight will only make more come to replace them. Cut a path through the monsters, and let's get out. As Kendo gave her orders, onto the cliffside the cave of located in, looking down on them, was a hound. Not yet participating in the fight. Just watching. Chapter 75, The B-Team, Part 2. Setsuna started the battle, raising her eyes into the sky to get a better look at the enemies, while Juzo jumped out in front, softening the ground, causing all but the Griffin-S to sink down into it. We got 30 wolves, 13 bears, 10 boars, 20 little dinosaur things, 18 bird things, 20 tigers, and 5 big snakes, Setsuna reported as quickly as she could. Meanwhile, the Grimm were struggling with the softened ground. The Bowfs, creeps, sabers, and Ursa were all effectively immobile, but the Griffin-S just flew right at them, and the Borbot husks were able to curl into a ball, and slowly roll through it, and the King Taijutsu could swim through it. Juzo, when I say so, hardened the ground. We can't afford to stay in one area. Kendo told him. Got it. Juzo nodded. Meanwhile, Pony and Rin kept firing at the Griffons, keeping them away from the group. Pony. Rin, keep the skies clear. Tetsu, protect them. Kendo ordered. Kamakiri, Monoma, take the snakes down. Shishida, Ibar take on the wolves. Sen, Oase, defeat the bears. Banto, slow down the dinosaur things and the tigers, and me and Yanagi will take care of them. Everyone else, support the others. Juzo now. Juzo touched the ground, causing it to become solid, and trapping all the Grimm that had been stuck in the ground were now encased in it, immobile at least for the time. However, some were able to break through, those being the Borbot husk, T's, Ursa, and creeps, while the Bowfs and sabers were still struggling to get out. Shishida charged forward as a beast, and grabbed a Beowulf out of the ground by its head, and crushed its skull, before pulling up another one like a carrot, and smashing it into another Beowulf. Borbot husk rolled at them at high speed, and Bondo jumped out in front and sprayed glue at them, causing them to get stuck to the ground. While the Borbot husk struggled to get out of the glue, Monoma and Kamakiri jumped over them and charged at the 5 KTS. One of the snakeheads lunged at Kamakiri, but the hero student just barely managed to jump over the attack, before flipping in the air and forming a blade on the back of his arm, to stab it in the head. Rah! The KT roared out in pain as the head that got stabbed flailed about, while Kamakiri hung on with his blade, digging it deeper into the Grimm. The other head lunged at Kamakiri, headbutting him, so hard he flew off its first head. Kamakiri hit the ground, making a blade come out of his back that stabbed into the ground, to keep himself from rolling too far. Meanwhile, Monoma ducked under one other snakehead lunge and formed a blade to slit its throat. The head reeled back and flailed about, while the other head took its turn to lunge at him. Monoma rushed to the side, and as the snake rushed past him, Monoma stuck his blade in its side, and slit it all down its right side. Rat! The grim snake gave a weak roar, as it fell to the ground, and died. Meanwhile, back with the rest of the class, Banto continued to glue the rest of the boar-bot husk, while Yui went in and touched them with her quirk, turning them all into tiny boars. Yanagi activated her quirk, picking up all the miniaturized boars and bringing them together on the ground, and holding them down. Kendo then enlarged her fist, and slammed it down on the boars, killing them all. Meanwhile, Pony and Rin had taken down 9 out of the 18 Griffons, but the rest were diving down towards them, getting a bit too close for comfort. One Griffin went for Rin and was about to perform a diving claw swipe on him, when Tetsu got in front of him, and took the hit, doing no damage to his steely body. Tetsu grabbed the Griffin's leg, and pulled it down, allowing Rin to get a perfect shot at its chest, killing it. Setsuna separated her hand from her body and carried away over to the Ursa, where Sen was dealing with them. Ducked under one of the Ursa's claw swipe, and then thrust his hand forward into the Ursa's chest, drilling into its body with his drill bit fingers, until his hand came out the other end, and the Ursa died, fading away into black smoke. 2 more Ursas charged at him, while close together, and he knew exactly what to do. He dashed forward and kicked one of the Ursa's head into the other so that they were touching. At that moment, Setsuna lowered away onto the 2 of them, and he fused their skulls together. Both Ursas roared, as they tried to move around to attack, but kept tripping up as they couldn't move effectively while used. Meanwhile, Ibar used her vines to pick up some Balfs and hold them in the air, binding them so Shishida could tear them apart. Back with Kamakiri, a KT had wrapped around him and was now attempting to crush him, but that was a mistake, and Kamakiri made blades come out of all parts of his body, that stabbed into the KT, killing them. Meanwhile, the Sabres had finally escaped from the ground and started charging at Kendo at top speed. Yanagi activated her quirk, and held up the Sabres in the air, albeit barely, as they were approaching the limit of what her quirk could lift. Manga then came in and used his own quirk, Kaboom. The onomatopoeia for Kaboom came out, and floated towards the 5 Sabres, and exploded when it reached them. But that was just the first wave, as while the 5 died, 7 more charged at them. Gamori jumped out and spurts the area with water, before jumping back. The Sabres lunged at the students, but Kendo came in and slapped them aside. All 7 of the Sabres got knocked on their side, but quickly got up, and were ready to retaliate. But they never got the chance, as suddenly, mushrooms started growing all around their bodies, including on their eyes and in their throats, causing them to swipe blindly as they suffocated. It seems like they don't have too many issues with large groups, Izuku noted. He had already started writing whole notebooks worth of notes about both the security and the students. They have very interesting quirks. Indeed. I'm quite happy they've lasted this long without losing a single member of their class. Nezu said. Shall we see if they handle the level 3 Grim? Not yet, Izuku said. I want to see how they handle the Hound. Ah, yes. That will be quite interesting indeed. Nezu chuckled, eager to see more from his students. Every member of Class 1B was completely and utterly exhausted. They finally defeated every Grim that had come at them and had regrouped in the center of the clearing. Ah! Told you we should have just killed all of them. Kamakiri gloated. You're assuming that was all of them. Kendo pointed out. They better be. Setsuna groaned. Because if we have to fight more of these then Ga. Suddenly, Setsuna was picked up by her neck, and slammed into the ground, by an invisible force. Slam. 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 After getting slammed in the ground a few times, Setsuna was tossed at the rocky cliff so hard the rock cracked, and Setsuna instantly passed out. What the hell? Manga shouted out in shock, as everyone got ready to fight again, but none of them really knew where this enemy was. After a few moments, suddenly Yui felt something grab her by the back of the head, and lift it up, before being slammed down, face first into the ground. Slam. 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 Much like Setsuna, Yui was slammed into the ground hard enough to crater it, knocking her unconscious. Damn it, can someone make it visible? Kendo asked. Gomori charged forward and started spraying the area. She was then picked up by her face by this invisible force. However, she at least was able to activate her quirk in time. The invisible opponent was then covered in mushrooms, including in their throat, making it rather hard to breathe. It was then the hound immediately became visible in its upright form, and threw Gomori away, as it struggled to breathe. "What is that thing?" Kamakiri asked. "I don't know, but at least Gomori killed it," Manga said. However, that was far from true. Suddenly, the hound's chest started glowing orange, before a stream of fire came out of its mouth, destroying all the mushrooms and clearing its throat. "You guys need to stop jinxing things," Oase told them. "Gomori, get away." Tetsuya Tetsu ran towards the mushroom girl, as she was now far too close to the hound, and completely defenseless. Unfortunately, he was too late, as the hound turned its attention to the small girl, and opened his flaming maw. Whoosh! The hound shot out fire at Gomori, which engulfed her completely. Gomori screamed as she was set alight. "Rat! Leave her alone." Tetsuya Tetsu ran in, and punched the hound in the face, not doing much damage, but pushing the stream of fire away from Gomori. Meanwhile, Pony used her horns to pick up Setsuna, Yui, and Gomori, bringing them to the rest of the class. 1B looked at their fallen classmates in horror, as they were all very injured, and completely unconscious. "Their injuries aren't life-threatening, but they're still pretty bad," Kendo said, after looking at them for a bit. "Grrr. I'm gonna kill that thing," Kamakiri said as it ran towards the hound, with blades coming out of his body. "Kamakiri, wait," Kendo told him, but she was ignored. Meanwhile, Tetsuya Tetsu punched the hound in the chest, and his steel fist just sunk into it, not seeming to do much damage. The hound jumped back, and got back on all fours, before letting out a stream of fire from its mouth at Tetsuya Tetsu. Gah! Tetsuya Tetsu grit his metal teeth, as he endured the flames. He'd been working on his heat resistance, so he could at least handle this much, although it did hurt a bit. The hound saw that its attack wasn't working, and so it stopped and took a second to think and analyze its opponent. It didn't get much time to do that though, as Kamakiri jumped in and delivered an attack from above with a blade coming out of his forearm. "Die!" Kamakiri shouted down at the Grim. However, the hound simply caught his blade in its mouth. Kamakiri's eyes widened, as he saw the hound's mouth glow, and he realized he'd made a mistake. Whoosh! Agh! Kamakiri shouted in pain as he took a flamethrower to the face. He tried to retract his blade, but the hound bit down tight on it, making sure the hero student was stuck there. Tetsuya Tetsu ran forward and punched the hound in its armored face, but the hound didn't loosen its grip. The steely student tried to pry its jaw open, but that was ineffective. "Tetsuya Tetsu, get out of the way!" Juzo shouted as he ran forward before touching the ground and activating his quirk. The ground softened under the hound, causing it to suddenly sink in, and lose its balance a bit, and its jaw loosened its grip for just a second, but that was enough for Tetsuya Tetsu to jump in, and pull his classmate out. Kamakiri was not in good shape, his face was burned a lot, and he was completely unconscious. Crap! Tetsuya Tetsu swore as he carried his classmate over towards the rest of the group. "That thing is on a whole other level from the things we've fought," Sen pointed out. "Well, at least now it's stuck," Kozai said. "Dude! Don't jinx it," Oase scolded. "What? It's stuck. Look at it." Kozai pointed at the hound, who was struggling to move in the mud-like ground. "What's it gonna do, fly out?" It was then that the hound grew wings, and flew out of the mud. The class looked at it in shock, before Waste glared at Kozai. I think it's adapting. Kendo pierced together. The more we fight it, the more it changes itself to counter us. The hound then flew towards them, and let out another stream of flames. The class dodged in separate directions as the flames came down, splitting the class in two. Pony and Rin shot it with their quirks, but the scales simply were absorbed into its body, doing no damage, and the horns didn't do much more than that. The hound turned its attention to the fallen classmates, who Pony had put down so she could focus on shooting it. It breathed another stream of flames around those students, causing the rest of their classmates around them to flee. The hound then grew another set of arms and dived at the fallen students, grabbing all of them in its arms, before going back up into the sky, and flying away. No! Kendo shouted out, as most of the class was helpless to do anything here. Pony shot out 4 horns, hoping that she could snag her classmates from the beast's arms, but when the horns got close, the hound's head turned around, and shot fire at them, destroying the horns, and allowing it to get away with the students. TCH. Damn it. Kuroro said. What's gonna happen to them? Banto asked, fearful for his classmates. Well, this is an exercise thought up by Udate, so they're probably fine, Kendo said, calming down her classmates. They just failed the exercise. Well, that's a relief, Ibara said. Still, to think we'd have to face such a fearsome beast. It's like Monoma, but it doesn't have to touch people. And it doesn't talk, Kozai said. So in other words, it's better Monoma. Monoma gave him an irritated look. Why, you little, we need to prepare, Kendo told her classmates. We just lost 4 classmates to one of those, imagine if there are more? We can't be caught off guard like this again. A change of approach is needed. This isn't a race to get to the middle, it's a fight for survival. The hound is more powerful than I'd thought, Izuku said. In the end, it took out 4 of them, although they were already tired. Yes, it is a particularly nasty creature, isn't it? Nezu said. The power of adaptation is a very powerful ability. Combined with its unique physiology, I can see why my students would have difficulties defeating it. That being said, do you plan to continue going easy on them? Izuku paused for a moment, before sighing. No, this is meant to be like a real break-in. Alright. Switch to level 3 security. Yeah. So it turns out this will be a 3-parter. Most likely, I may have to make it a 4-parter because this is going on much longer than I thought. Oh well. Also, as you might have noticed, I've had difficulties using certain quirks in battle. Like Kuroro and Shuda's. They're quirks that would work pretty well on humans, but on armored Grim. It's a bit difficult. You might think, Kuroro can enter black objects and control them. Wouldn't that include the Grim? Yes. Some of them. Some of them are too small, and others have the black broken up by white armor. However, that doesn't matter, as that ability is something Kuroro developed later and wouldn't have at this point in time, so all he can do is punch them. Yeah, no, super effective. Maybe I'll find some use for them, I don't know. Also, you might be thinking, hey, I don't recall the hound breathing fire or turning invisible. Well, I don't think it did in the show, but that doesn't mean it couldn't. Its power is adapting by changing its physiology, so why wouldn't it be able to do that? One last thing, the Grim are not living things, and are technically not counted as organic by certain quirks. They're like robots but made to seem like they're alive. Chapter 76, The B-Team Part 3. The remaining members of Class 1B were back on the move, rushing through the forest as quickly and quietly as they could. Stop, Kendo ordered, bringing the class to a halt. Kuroro, scout the area. Got it. Kuroro ran forward and jumped into a shadow. It feels like we're going in circles. Bondo groaned. I have to admit, it doesn't feel like we're making all too much progress without Setsuna, And the fact that we're in a forest and thus everything looks the same doesn't really help, Yanagi said. Come now. Don't despair, my friends. We are the great Class 1B of UA, Monoma told his friends. The greatest class UA has ever seen. We will get through this. Ego stroking aside, Monoma's right. If we give up hope, then we've already lost, Kendo told them. We can do this, guys. It was at the moment that Kiroro came back, popping out of the closest shadow. There are a bunch of those floating orb things up ahead. And to out left and right. But there's a path we can take northeast of here that clear. Alright, everyone, we're heading northeast, Kendo ordered. Eventually, the group made their way to another clearing, this one next to another cliff. I'm tired, Banto complained as he tried to catch his breath. Yeah, I'm pretty tired too. Any chance we could take a break? Rin asked. Not here. We're too out in the open, any one of those flying things could spot us easily. Kendo said. We need to rah! Screamed something from above. Suddenly 2 manticores dived down from the sky and got ready to attack. Like that. Kendo shouted. The manticores opened their mouths and started shooting fireballs at the class. Awase cried out in pain as one of the fireballs hit him and sent him flying back. Awase! Kendo shouted out in concern. Tetsu and Monoma got out in front of the class and defended the class from the fireballs. Kendo ran to Awase to check up on him. Awase. I'm fine. Awase groaned. He was covered in burns and had trouble getting up. Rin and Pony started firing at the manticores, but much like with the Hound, this did very little to their thick hides and armor. I can't get through. Rin shouted. Tetsu. I need to get closer. Cover me. Sen shouted, getting behind. Got it. Tetsu said. The two started getting closer to the manticores, with the 2 beasts focusing their fire on Tetsu. Eventually, the 2 reached the monsters, and then Sen jumped onto Tetsu's shoulders, using them as a springboard so he could jump onto one of the manticores' back. Sen found an unarmored part on its back and started drilling into it. Although its tough hide offered some resistance, he could get through it with enough time. The manticore was obviously not pleased by this and started thrashing about wildly. Sen had to hold onto one of its horns, just to stay on as he kept drilling. After unsuccessfully trying to box Sen off on the ground, the manticore took to the sky. And if that wasn't bad enough, the other manticore also took the sky, flying behind the one Sen was on, and started firing fireballs at him. Someone do something. Sen pleaded to his classmates. Fire at their wings. Kendo ordered. Rin and Pony opened fire once again, this time aiming specifically for the wings, which was hard with them flying around the way they were. However, with enough perseverance, they managed to shoot their wings enough to knock them out of the air. Juzo softened their fall. Kendo shouted. Juzo quickly ran out in front of them and softened the ground. The 2 manticores fell onto the mud-like ground and quickly got stuck in it. Sen finally pushed through the hide and was now quickly drilling into the grims and sides. Ag! The manticore roared, as it started to die, its body fading away, into black smoke. Pony sent out another horn to catch Sen by his shirt, to keep him from falling into the softened ground, before bringing him to the rest of the class. Good job, Sen. Kendo praised him. Now let's go. What about the other one? Sen asked, looking at the manticore that was currently struggling inside the mud. Leave it, it doesn't look like it can follow us, Kendo said. We need to get out of here before reinforcements arrive. And with urgency, Class B fled back into the forest. After a bit more running through the forest, it was clear that the class needed to take a break. All the fighting and running was taking its toll, and they wouldn't be able to go on much longer if they didn't sit down for a while. Kendo found a particularly dense part of the forest, covered in shade, and they all sat down to take a rest. Oh! I hate Nezu. I hate him so much. Kozai said. I hate him and his smug little rodent face. probably laughing his ass off as we speak. It's improper to say such things about your teacher, Shishida said. That being said, I can't disagree with you. Kuroro, please take a look around the area, Kendo asked her classmate. Ugh. Fine. Kuroro groaned, before sinking into the shadows and moving away. These monsters only grow stronger the more we travel, Ibar pointed out. As if we're descending further into hell itself. Yeah, and we still haven't seen that dog thing in a while. Sen pointed out. Don't remind me. I don't want to have to deal with that thing again. Oase groaned. It wasn't just stronger than all the other ones, it was smarter too, Kendo said. If we run into it, we'll have to throw everything we've got into killing it. Yeah, I'm gonna get payback for what it did to the others. Tetsu swore. Damn Setsuna, she had to go and get taken, so now I have to do all the damn surveillance, Kuroro growled. He moved through the shadows created by the trees, looking around for Grim that his class might run into. And of course that means I can't take a freaking break, Kuroro grumbled to himself. Because no one else can. Whoosh. Suddenly fire shot down from above, a few feet in front of Kuroro, lighting up the area, dispelling the shadows, causing Kuroro to pop out of the ground. What the hell? Kuroro quickly got, and as he was about to dive for another shadow, he felt a cool hand on his shoulder, and he froze up in fear. He turned his head, and behind him was the hound. Oh shit. Kuroro hasn't come back yet. Shoda noticed, looking worried. You don't think something happened, do you? No way. Manga said. How will those things even be able to see him? Unless he was talking to himself, none of them should have noticed him, Sen said. You know how slippery it is. I'm sure he'll be fine, Kendo said, not sounding too sure herself. Guys. Suddenly, from deeper in the forest, they heard Kuroro's voice but didn't see him. More enemies are coming. We have to move now. The only safe path is straight ahead. Come on. What? Damn it. Everyone get up, it's time to move. Kendo shouted as she quickly ran up. The class got up quickly, and made a run for it, going straight ahead like Kuroro told them. Eventually, they arrived at a dead end. A steep cliff, from where you could see the house from. Whoa. It's there. It's the center of the forest. Pony said with elation. That is a rather large house, Shishida noted. Guys. Focus. We just got backed up onto the edge of a cliff with monsters chasing us. Kendo pointed out, before looking back at the forest. Kuroro, get out here. A few moments passed. And Kuroro came out. Unconscious, and in the hands of the hound. Class 1B's eyes widened in shock and fear, and they all backed up a bit, only to realize that there was a cliff behind them, and backing up much further would cause them to fall off. It took out Kuroro. Oase shouted. It must have got him while he was surveying the area. Kendo decided. And it mimicked his voice to lure us into a trap. Tetsu and Shishida jumped out in front, ready to fight it. However, the hound had other plans. Suddenly, the ground started to shake, and a blind worm popped out of the ground, breaking up the ground on the cliffside, and causing it to become unstable. The ground around 1B quickly collapsed, and they started falling to the ground. They all screamed as they plummeted. Pony shot out 4 horns, putting 2 under her feet, so she could fly, and using the other 2 to catch Sen and Rin. Tetsu activated his quirk, with Monoma copying it. Yanagi used her quirk to move some nearby rocks, and grabbed onto them, allowing them to float slowly towards the ground. Shishida went full beast, hoping his bulk would protect him. Manga looked down as shouted, boing, creating the physical word boing, that went to the ground, waiting to catch him. And for Kendo, she enlarged hands and held them out in front of her. Then everyone hit the ground. Crash. Most of the class hit the ground hard. Pony was fine as she gently floated down on her horns, setting down Sen and Rin who she saved from the fall. Yanagi floated down as well, and Manga bounced off his boing. Tetsu, Monoma, and Shishida took the hard fall in stride. It hurt, like hell, but they were mostly fine. Kendo's hands took the worst of her fall, and she grit her teeth as she was almost definitely sure she bruised them. But it was worse for everyone else, who had nothing to soften or slow their fall. Ugh! Kendo groaned as she shrunk her hands back down, feeling a horrible stunning pain in both of them. Oh! Everyone? The class rep looked over her class. Of them, only Pony, Sen, Rin, Yanagi, Tetsu, Monoma, Shishida, Manga, and herself were still capable of continuing. Banto, Shota, Ibara, Kozai, Oase, and Juzo had all been knocked out by the fall. Damn it! Kendo cursed, blaming herself internally for having been tricked by that Grim. As the remaining members of the class recovered, suddenly the ground started shaking again, and a Geist in a rock golem body followed by 2 Deathstalkers and 2 Goliaths. They blocked their only way to escape, meaning they would have to fight them to get out. Monoma looked at the unconscious Juzo, who had fallen nearby, and touched him to copy his quirk, before running out in front of everyone, and touching the ground, and softening it. The Grim all began to sink down into the mud-like ground, with the Deathstalker becoming completely immobile, while the Geist and Goliath slowly trudged their way towards them. Alright, our only way out is forward. Yanagi, blind that golem thing, and Shishida, attack its face that looks like a weak spot. Everyone else focus on the elephants. Yanagi used her quirk to grab all the tiny pieces of rock that had come with them from the fall, and brought them up the Geist's face, blocking its view. Shishida shrunk down again and turned to Pony. Miss Pony, could you bring me to its face? Okay. Pony said, shooting out a horn that Shishida grabbed onto, as it carried him up to the Geist's face, who couldn't see him because of all the rocks in the way. Once Shishida was above the Grim, he let go of the horn, and went full beast, and dived onto the Geist. Yanagi stopped blinding the thing, so Shishida could land on its body. Shishida then grabbed both sides of its mask and started pulling as hard as he could. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr of its stone body. The Geist brought up one of its stone arms over its face and smashed Shishida against its body. Gah! Shishida cried out in pain as the massive boulder smashed into him, but grit his teeth, and continued to pull the Geist out of the golem. Plus Ultra. With a final cry, he pulled the Geist out of the golem, and immediately crushed its head in his hands. Meanwhile, Rin was firing his scales at the Goliaths, which, as with all the tougher Grimm, did nothing. Pony also tried firing her horns at it, which was equally ineffective. "Get me onto it," Sen said. Pony sent out another horn, and Sen grabbed onto it, and let him lift him into one of the Goliaths. He tried to drill into the unarmored spots on its back, but unlike the Manticore, he wasn't making a dent here. "I can't drill through. It's too tough." Shishida jumped off the now falling rocks of the Geist's golem, and onto a Goltith's back, and tried attacking it, but to no avail. "We can't hurt it," Kendo realized, before trying to come up with another plan. "We can't run away when all the ground in front of us is softened like that. But if we unsoften it, they'll come straight for us." Then again, those things were slow even before we used Juzo's quirk on the ground. "Maybe we could just run away." The class rep looked down at her fallen classmates. "We have 6 down. Pony can carry 4 of them, with her horns, but we'll have to carry 2 ourselves, and that'll slow us down. Still, we don't have much of a choice. Monoma. Turn the ground solid, we have to run," Kendo ordered. Monoma nodded, and touched the ground again, turning it solid again, and trapping the Grimm in the dirt. However, the Goliaths immediately broke out, and the Deathstalkers were working their way out as well. "Everyone, run for it!" Kendo shouted. "Pony, grab whoever you can." Shishida grabs the 2 she doesn't. Pony did as ordered, grabbing Ibara, Juzo, Oase, and Kozai with her horns and running past the Grimm with her friends. Shishida jumped down and grabbed Bondo and Shota, and made a run for it as well. The Goliaths charged at them, but the class was able to jump out of the way in time. They were approaching the trees, and it looked like they could make it. And then 3 Birangels jumped out, blocking their path. "Uh-oh!" Manga shouted. "Rag!" One of the Birangels charged at Pony, jumping at her with terrifying speed, before smacking her aside with its huge arm. Pony cried out in pain, as she was knocked aside like a rag doll, breaking her concentration, and causing her horns to drop, and her classmates to fall to the ground. Shishida dropped his classmates and charged at one of the Birangels. Rah! The two clashed, locking arms as they engaged in a contest of strength. That Shishida was quickly losing. The Birangel shoved him to the ground and started punching him down into the dirt. "Get off him!" Tetsuya Tetsu charged at the Birangel that was beating Shishida. "Tetsuya Tetsu, watch out!" Kendo shouted to try and warn her classmate. "Huh?" Tetsuya Tetsu turned his head and saw that a Goliath was charging right at him. Tetsuya Tetsu couldn't dodge in time as the Goliath hit him in the back with its tusk, sending him flying. Meanwhile, the Deathstalkers were finally pulling themselves out of the ground and getting ready to join the fight. And, while that was happening, one of the Birangels had jumped onto the weakened Pony, and punched her in the face, knocking her out immediately. Monoma charged at the Birangel still beating up Shishida, using Tetsuya Tetsu's quirk, intent on stopping it, making sure to watch for Goliaths, but something else came to stop him. Slam! The hound jumped down from the cliff, landing right in front of Monoma. Monoma only had a moment to look at it in horror, before it grabbed his face, and its hands glowed yellow. Monoma screamed as the hound shocked him with electricity, which ran all around his sealed-up body, knocking him out as soon as it stopped. As Monoma dropped to the ground, the hound turned its attention to Yanagi, who stared at it completely terrified. She quickly reacted, picking up whatever was around, tree branches, rocks, whatever, and throwing it at the hound, which did absolutely nothing. The hound's arm extended, shooting out and grabbing Yanagi's face from a few yards away, and giving her the same taser treatment Monoma got. Yanagi gave out a ghastly scream, as she felt electricity course through her body before it suddenly stopped, and she lost consciousness. Meanwhile, Mango was running away from 2 Deathstalkers that were hot on his tail, only for a Birangel to come in from the side and clothesline him, knocking him out immediately. Rin tried to shoot at Birangel, but to no avail, as the monstrous ape quickly grabbed him with both hands, and started crushing him in its grip. Sen gave a desperate charge at the hound and shoved his drill arm right through the beast. He took his arm out and saw that he made a huge hole right in its chest, and for a second, he thought maybe he killed it. That thought was quickly proven wrong, as the hole patched itself up, as the hound regenerated in seconds. Kendo heard the screams of Sen getting tased and knew she was now the last member of her class left. The Grim closed in on her, surrounding her with the hound staring her down. Did we ever stand a chance? Kendo wondered. As Izuku watched the last member of 1B go down, he gave his order. "All right, bring them all to the infirmary. Quickly." They made it surprisingly far, Nezu commented, having watched on his own seer that Izuku sent him. "I honestly expected them to fall as soon as you sent out the level 3 Grim. But they didn't go down easily." "No, they didn't." Izuku took a moment to think about all this. "They got farther than I'd like, but at the same time it's a group of 20 UA students, so maybe that shouldn't color my opinion of this too much, and they didn't even make it to level 4. Then again, I don't want anyone to make it to level 4. I recommend we see what 1B has to say about the system, and then we'll decide if it was adequate or not," Nezu told him. "I guess that's best," Izuku said. "I just have to wait for them to wake up." Chapter 77, B-Team Out. "Oh!" Kendo groaned as she finally opened her eyes, and light flooded in. Kendo immediately recognized that she was lying on a bed, in some kind of infirmary. She sat up and saw her classmates laying on beds, nearby. All of them having their injuries treated. "Oh, you Setsuna groaned, as she too started to wake up. Did anyone get the number on that fucking bus that hit me? Various groans across the room could be heard, as everyone started to wake up. Ah, what happened? Yu asked. Where are we? Kuroro scowled. This doesn't look like the UA infirmary? Juzo pointed out. You in my house. Everyone looked to their left, and saw Yami, patiently staring at them while sitting in a small red chair. They all paused for a minute, noting his appearance and how similar it was to monsters they fought. You brought here after my Grim beat you, Yami explained. Wait, are you the one that made all those monsters we fought? Manga asked him, his head becoming a question mark. Yami nodded. My, Grim. I make them with my quirk. It's very strong quirk. I would have to agree. Ibara shivered. To think a child could command such an army of demons. Wait, does that mean we got our butts kicked by 6-year-old? Kamakiri shouted, damn, that sucks. Setsuna added. Many of the Class 1B members groaned at the humiliation they suffered, getting absolutely demolished by a boy who didn't look older than 10. Now everyone don't despair. Monoma said. Our defeat to this child is not the embarrassment you may think. It's not as if we engaged a child in 1 versus 20 combat. He sent an entire army our way. We fought hordes of terrifying beasts before we fell. Don't forget that. That does make it less embarrassing, Rin admitted. Kendo sighed, not feeling any of her frustration deplete. Still, we failed the exercise. No, you didn't, Yami said. Huh? Most of the class gave him confused looks. Kid, we were told to get here, and we didn't, Sen explained. Sounds like we failed to me. Yami shook his head. Nezu said you can't fail. Because task was impossible. Eh? Shouted the entire class. It was then that the door opened, and Recovery Girl came in. Yami dear, I told you not disturb them while they were recovering. Sorry. Yami apologized. Got excited. I understand dear, but go wait with your father for now. You can hear from them later. Recovery Girl told him. Yami nodded, and obediently left the room, just as Momo entered. Yaozu? Kendo gasped, shocked to see her here. What are you doing here? Let me guess. Class 1A was given the same exercise as we were. I bet you didn't get anywhere near as close as we did. Monoma gloated. And for that matter, thankfully Yanagi cut him off but using her quirk to hit him in the head with a nearby metal tray. Well, it's rather difficult to explain, Momo said. To start with, you are currently located in the infirmary of the Midoriya Foundation estate. Wait, Midoriya Foundation? Shishida paused. Wasn't that the foundation owned by the young man who was nearly assassinated not too long ago? That's correct, Momo said. The Midoriya Foundation is essentially a place for overly powerful children whose parents leave them for one reason or another, are to be raised, such as Yami who you just saw. A place for OP kids. Okay, that makes sense, Setsuna said. But still, what's a member of 1A doing here? Weren't you guys on a trip? This is the trip, Momo explained. We were sent here to assist Midoriya after he fell ill. He is currently understaffed, so we're acting as temporary staff, while also fulfilling our academic duties and training. And as temporary staff, it is also my job to inform you that Midoriya and Principal Nezo are waiting for you in the main office. If you want more of your questions answered, then you'll likely need to head up there. I can lead you if you'd like. That would be great, thank you, Kendo said. I think we'd all like to figure out what is going on. Momo led them all to Izuku's office, where Izuku himself was waiting for them at his desk, with Nezu also being present, having pulled up a chair beside Izuku, behind the desk. Yami was also present, sitting beside the desk, waiting patiently. Ah, Class 1B. Nezu greeted them. I'm glad to see you're awake. It seems Recovery Girl did another fantastic job. Miss Yaozu, if you would. Of course. Momo promptly left the room, leaving only Class 1B, Izuku, Yami, And Nezu? Well, then, I suppose you all must be very confused, Nezu said. So allow me to start from the beginning. Class 1B looked at him attentively, finally ready for an explanation. As you may have heard, Mr. Midraya here was the victim of an assassination attempt, Nezu explained. As such, he was looking to improve his security system. Using the grim little Yami over there creates as guards. Yami waved, and Kendo gave an awkward wave back. And so he developed a new security system, but had no way to test it. Nezu continued. And that is where you came in. Wait. So you used us as lab rats? Kamakiri shouted in outrage. No, of course not. Nezu laughed at the accusation. Being a lab rat only benefits one person, whereas this is mutually beneficial. He gets to test his security system, and you all get experience. Experience? Kuro scoffed. Yes, thought this you gained many new experiences, Nezu said. Experience in fighting multiple opponents, experience in fighting clever opponents, flying opponents, stronger opponents, fighting forest, being trapped. There is so much valuable information that can be gained from this exercise, that your next class will be entirely about analyzing your time here, and how you could have improved. Of course we didn't expect you to actually completely exercise. Izuku jumped into the conversation. Not to say you guys aren't powerful or skilled, you guys actually made it farther than we thought you would. It's just that some of the Grim we have, and the number we have them in is a bit much for most people. I'm honestly glad you didn't make it to level 4. The Grim at those levels are brutal to say the least. Wait. Level 4? Sen interrupted. What do you mean level 4? The level system was made so that way threats are taken care of appropriately. The deeper you get into the forest, the higher the security level gets, and more dangerous Grim get added. Nezu said. That explains why things kept getting harder the deeper we went into the forest. Kendo surmised. And we didn't even make it to the maximum level. Well, to be fair, you made it to level 3 out of 4, so you got pretty far, Izuku said to comfort them. To think there are things worse than that hellhound. Ibara shivered, as did the rest of the class. Ah, yes, the hound, Nezu said fondly. That one was an exception, Izuku told them. The hound is an intelligent, ever-adapting Grim. The only kind of Grim that can think on a human level. It's probably one of the toughest Grim Yami has ever created. But since it's intelligent and can adapt, I don't have to worry about accidentally killing someone, so it can act at any of the security levels. Well, thanks for the nightmares, Greenie. That thing will haunt my dreams for at least the next few months, Setsuna said bitterly. My apologies, Nezu didn't tell me that he wouldn't be informing you of what you'd be facing. Izuku gave a brief bow. Also, I would like to ask what you thought of my security system in general? And if you have any advice on how to improve it. How to improve it? Manga asked, shocked as hell. Who's trying to kill you, the US Army? We don't know who is currently after Mr. Midraya's life, as such it is better safe than sorry, Nezu added. Well, Kendo thought about it for a moment. I feel like the difference between your air troops was too big. The bird things were rather easy to dispose of, while the flying lions were far more dangerous. I feel like there could be something between the two, that is both more numerous and more difficult to defeat. Something between the Griffons and Manticores. Izuku paused. Come to think of it, no new air-based Grim are added, in level 2. In fact, level 2 was actually had a somewhat disappointing performance. So maybe more kinds of Grim can be added there? Yami jotted this all down on a notepad he brought, listening very closely to what everyone was saying. Other than that, everything seemed pretty solid, Kendo told him. I doubt anything other than an army of powerful villains could get through. Although having not seen level 4, I can't give you my full opinion. That's completely fair. Thank you for your input, and thank you all for your time, Izuku said, opening one of his desk's drawers, and pulling out a stack of checks. Excuse me? Nezu's expression didn't change, But he seemed but surprised and slightly displeased by this. This was not what we agreed upon. I said the same thing to you when you had them go into that forest blind. Izuku reminded him as he put the checks on the table. And you said, and I quote, "But it's not what we agreed upon." Touche, Mr. Midoriya. Touche. Nezu replied. Oh sweet, we're getting paid. Kyoryu was the first to grab his check, with the others swiftly following. Oh man, look at how much this is. Thanks, Midoriya. Tetsu said. Are you sure this is okay? Kendo asked. This is a lot of money. It's fine, this won't even make a dent in my wallet, Izuku told them. And it's the least I can do after you helped test my security system. Yes. Be very grateful for Mr. Midoriya's generosity, Nezu told them. That being said, the school day is coming to a close, so I believe it's time we took our leave. That would be for the best, Izuku said. Thank you all so much for your contribution to keeping my children safe. I know you'll all become fantastic heroes.